Chapter 2757. Victory had been decided. The Sword Emperor was dead, and Chu Shixian was gravely injured. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed, and he saved Chu Shixian. He also pulled the Liang Emperor's sword out of the Sword Emperor's head. Blood was still gushing out of Chu Shixian's sword wound. The Sharp Emperor technique was destroying his life force, and there was no way to stop it. The Saber Emperor and the other two Class 1 Hall experts did not even look at the Sword Emperor. If he was dead, he was dead. It was not worth mentioning. They just needed to complete the mission. Chu Shixian was gravely injured, and whether he could recover was another matter. Next battle. I'll do it. Emperor Li held the thrall and stared coldly at Yi Qinghan and Immortal Emperor Qingzun, waiting for them to make their move. Yi Qinghan squatted down slowly and ignored Emperor Li. Instead, he sealed Chu Shijun's injuries. However, the Emperor technique was too strong and powerful. Immortal medicines could no longer heal his injuries. Only the Emperor medicine could do it. But even if they were willing to take out Emperor medicine, would the three allow Yi Qinghan to save Chu Shixian? They had to work together to kill him. Just as Immortal Emperor Qingzun was about to step forward, Yi Qinghan suddenly stood up. I'll take this battle. Yi Qinghan's figure flashed, and he appeared in the center of the battlefield. He waved his hand and sent the Sword Emperor's corpse to the entrance of the Imperial Mausoleum. He stood proudly in the center and gestured with his hand. I want to see how strong Class 1 Hall is. I want to see if their reputation is just for show. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. His battle robes fluttered without any wind. His aura protected his body, and he shone with divine light. The image of a dragon and a tiger appeared, and his domineering aura soared. He stood there like an undefeatable war god. I'll show weakness first. I'll lure and kill one of them, and the remaining two will be easy to deal with. Yi Qinghan thought to himself. Every step was planned perfectly. Emperor Li held the thrall weapon in his hand and stepped into the battlefield. Everyone stared at him. This battle was the crux of the mission. Once he crushed Yi Qinghan's Dao heart, the mission would be complete. It did not matter if the others died or not. But as everyone stared at Yi Qinghan, the colorful snake transformed into a beam of light. With the help of Yi Qinghan's immortal light, it rushed into the distance from the ground and returned to the entrance of the Imperial Mausoleum. It tore open the left arm of the Sword Thearka's corpse and drilled into his body. The multicolored snake crazily devoured the Sword Thearka's blood, flesh, and blood, purifying his bloodline. No one would pay attention to a corpse, and no one would pay attention to a little spiritual pet ant, because everyone was a supreme being, and it was imperative for them to become emperors. If they didn't die, they would become emperors. A corpse was actually quickly devoured by the multicolored snake until only a skeleton was left. It was incomparably horrifying. After the multicolored snake devoured the Sword Thearka's flesh, it quickly went into seclusion in the Imperial Mausoleum. At this moment, Emperor Li was already not far from Yi Qinghan. The thrall weapon unleashed its Emperor technique, and the Emperor's aura spread. His eyes under the mask met Yi Qinghan's gaze. What? Dragons and tigers contended for supremacy. Yi Qinghan clenched his iron fists and said coldly, "Make your move. There's no need to use your aura to suppress me. You weren't even born when I did." Indeed, in terms of aura, perhaps only the Taigu Emperor could suppress Yi Qinghan. What? Yi Qinghan had just finished his words when his aura surged. It reached the ceiling and directly suppressed Emperor Li's aura. Emperor Li flew into a rage out of humiliation. With the thrall weapon in his hand, he slashed through the void and broke through Yi Qinghan's aura. He went straight for the real body. Boom! Yi Qinghan's iron fists could shatter mountains and rivers. He punched the thrall weapon. There was nothing more powerful than this. He used his physical body to smash the fake Taigu Emperor's thrall weapon. Terrifying human Dao techniques rumbled. The power of human Dao gathered in the human Dao Emperor Pagoda and covered the sky. Boom! The aura was indeed powerful, but the thrall weapon shattered the human Dao Emperor Pagoda. Boom! Bang! Yi Qinghan's iron fists followed closely behind, smashing into the thrall weapon. Mountains and rivers trembled and all laws wailed. Even though Yi Qinghan had the aura of dragons and tigers contending for supremacy, his body was still being pushed back. Haha. Someone like this is a tribulation taker? What trash. Can't even withstand a single blow. Emperor Lu roared. He continued to attack with an even stronger aura, forcing Yi Qinghan to retreat. In the distance, the Saber Emperor and Axe Emperor frowned. Logically speaking, someone that even the Dao Patrollers and Hall Masters were wary of shouldn't be so weak. Showing weakness to the enemy? Those standing outside the situation were the clearest. Those inside the situation were a little preposterous. They had been blinded by victory. The Saber Emperor and the others seemed to understand Yi Qinghan's intentions. They smirked and said quietly, "Will Axe fall for such a small trick?" The simpler the plan, the easier it was to trick someone. What? Yi Qinghan's battle robes were torn by the thrall weapon. His wounds were bloody. At this moment, Yi Qinghan's eyes were focused, and the light did not leak out. He was looking for an opportunity to kill with one strike. However, this Emperor Lu was not to be trifled with. He had not intentionally let Yi Qinghan tear his battle robe. If you don't want to fight, then die. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The thrall weapon tore through the sky, constantly brushing past Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan kept dodging. He looked battered and exhausted, but only he knew that he was handling it with ease. The state of dragon and tiger accompanied Yi Qinghan. Each time, he narrowly escaped from his opponent. Each time, it was more dangerous. Emperor Lu felt more and more certain that he could win. Yi Qinghan, kneel and beg for mercy. This emperor will take you in as a gatekeeper. Hua hua hua. Boom. Emperor Lu attacked and mocked Yi Qinghan at the same time, suppressing his Dao heart. Yi Qinghan was disdainful. He started to attack, but only used 50% of his strength. Each time, he faced Emperor Lu with a defeated stance. This gave Emperor Lu even more confidence. The ground cracked. Yi Qinghan retreated all the way to the foot of the Imperial Mausoleum. He seemed to be panting, but he didn't use much strength at all. Boom! The thrall weapon smashed the Imperial Mausoleum. Sparks flew everywhere. Every strike had a backup. He didn't give Yi Qinghan a chance to kill him in one strike. Boom! Yi Qinghan used 70% of his strength this time. He sent Emperor Lu flying and started to suppress his Dao heart. Emperor Li's hand went numb. Looking at Yi Qinghan's bloody right hand, he was instantly enraged. He mustered all his strength, wanting to defeat Yi Qinghan in one strike and force him to his knees. What? The thrall weapon roared. Light shone brightly as it slashed wildly at Yi Qinghan. Its razor-sharp edge pierced through order and obscured one's vision. Ka-ka-ka. Wah-wah-wah. At this moment, Yi Qinghan's aura suddenly erupted. Blue veins popped out on his arms as he pushed his strength to the maximum. Adding the power provided by the Starry Sky Demon Core, he punched out, shattering the ancient spacetime, towards Ma Bing. This punch changed the color of the mountains and rivers. All laws wailed. Not good. He's hiding his strength. Emperor Lu was shocked. At this moment, he didn't even have the chance to retreat. Because he had used all his strength. Boom. Yi Qinghan didn't give anyone much time to think. He smashed his fist on the thrall soldier, and the flame ancestral arm burst forth. The bones of his fist radiated with dharma and logos and order. Every cell of his perfect golden body of utmost holiness contained boundless power. Bam! Kacha! The pseudo-Taigu Emperor's thrall weapon exploded from Yi Qinghan's punch. Emperor Li's hand bones broke. Yi Qinghan's fist carried the thrall weapon towards Emperor Li's face. Boom! Kacha! The thrall weapon shattered. Yi Qinghan's fist smashed into Emperor Li's face, carrying his head towards the Imperial Mausoleum Mountain. Emperor Li's facial bones were all broken. His face was unrecognizable. Even his head was deformed. It was too terrifying. This strength was unparalleled. A single punch had smashed the pseudo-Taigu Emperor's thrall weapon. It was equivalent to smashing a huge star. Emperor Li's spirit was subdued on the spot. He died tragically. His body was stretched taut. After a long time, it fell slowly. He didn't even have the chance to struggle. Emperor Lu was dead. Yi Qinghan's hand bones were all broken. His arm was a bloody mess. He was in so much pain that his face contorted. He glared at the Saber Emperor and said hoarsely, "It's no fun playing with him. Saber Emperor, let's play." Chapter 2758. Yi Qinghan had an ominous glint in his eyes. He had directly challenged the Saber Emperor, which meant that he had not expended much effort. It was obvious that he had pretended to be weak. Emperor Lu had died miserably because he had been baited. He could only blame himself for being stupid. Yi Qinghan had challenged the Saber Emperor directly because he wanted to experience what it was like to have a complete saber. Moreover, the Saber Emperor was the strongest among the four of them. There was no need to worry about killing him. The Saber Emperor's eyes flashed as he calculated Yi Qinghan's plan. With a wave of his hand, a battle saber similar to Tanggu's appeared in his hand. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "I heard that your 7 feet berserk is indestructible and unstoppable. Today, I want to give it a try." Hua! The Saber Emperor stepped on the great Dao and slowly walked towards the center of the battlefield. His emperor robes danced in the wind. His aura was actually on par with Yi Qinghan's aura. His emperor's heart was probably stronger. Yi Qinghan grabbed at the void and the 7 feet berserk clashed with the sky, radiating with boundless light. "As you wish. I also want to see if the Saber Emperor's technique can beat mine." Yi Qinghan's aura surged as he held the battle saber with both hands. This time, he did not dare to show weakness. The Saber Emperor's attack was bound to be thunderous. Once he showed weakness, he would definitely fail miserably. "Then let's fight." Boom! Hua hua hua! The saber radiance struck the air and tore through the void. The two did not waste time talking. The saber was the hegemon of weapons. Those who used the saber were all domineering people. Boom boom boom. Hummed the saber radiance tore through the sky and collided thousands of times in the blink of an eye. At this moment, any technique was useless. Strength could break through everything. Swish swish swish. The Saber Emperor's saber was light. In the blink of an eye, he could slash out dozens of times. Each slash contained boundless strength. However, Yi Qinghan was not slow either. The berserk had already become one with his body. The saber was a part of his body. His powerful soul spirit supported his eyes to see through everything. Each slash broke through the void. Each slash broke through dozens of slashes from the Saber Emperor. Their auras collided, and even his battle robes were shattered. The auras were too strong. The aftershocks spread out dozens of miles. Hua! The star-twisting vine supported Chu Shijun as it retreated, dodging the saber force. Immortal Emperor Qing Zun didn't move from his original spot. His eyes flashed with wisdom. He kept looking at the other axe monarch. His fingertips moved the sword hilt and the immortal sword was ready to be unsheathed. He had changed his sword. He had taken this immortal sword from the Lingshao Imperial Hall. It was a pseudo-immemorial emperor sword. Together with his fighting power, there was still hope for him to kill this axe monarch. If, too, was lost. Yi to be attacked. Yi read. To Yi. In terms of saber skills, Yi Qinghan could not win. Saber skills were different. Yi Qinghan's saber skills were self-created. His opponent was using an emperor technique. Yi Qinghan kept retreating. His hand was numb. Blood flowed out and dyed his saber hilt red. Roar! Dragon and tiger soared into the sky. They turned into energy wings and dodged. They tried to figure out Saber Emperor's saber skills. Occasionally, they would attack and force Saber Emperor to use stronger saber skills. Yi Qinghan, do you only know how to hide? Saber Emperor was strong. He pierced through the back of Violent Saber and stabbed at Yi Qinghan's throat. Yi Qinghan's legs crossed. The ground cracked. However, he stood firm. No matter how strong the saber skills were, they could not move him. Kakaka. Yi Qinghan's veins were bulging. He could see Saber Emperor's blood flow. The Emperor technique was right in front of him. But Yi Qinghan fiercely shook his saber, knocking the saber out of the Saber Monarch's hand. His blood essence circulated in the same way as the saber monarch's. He unleashed a monstrous emperor's art, destroying everything in its path. Saber Emperor was shocked. He held his saber with both hands and slashed at the descending violent saber. The ground cracked. Saber Emperor was sent deep into the ground by the saber. The ravine extended for hundreds of miles. God slaying immortal. Yi Qinghan erupted and began to take control of the situation. His tyrannical saber tore through the mountains and rivers as it descended from the sky and slashed into the depths of the earth, drowning the Saber Emperor's location. A low roar echoed in the ravine. However, a figure shuttled through the terrifying energy. In the blink of an eye, he was dozens of miles away. Although Saber Emperor was injured, he managed to escape the killing blow. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. He wanted to find Saber Emperor's whereabouts. However, he seemed to have escaped. Yi Qinghan was sure that this person was nearby. His movement technique was similar to the one he saw in Chu Shijun's ancestral immortal land. The person I saw that day was also from Class 1 Hall. He should be the one who killed reincarnation Shakyamuni and nine-colored Brahma heart. Yi Qinghan was shocked. He did not expect Class 1 Hall to be so powerful. They even had the Taigu Emperor. Just as Yi Qinghan was distracted, a saber slashed through the order. The Emperor technique's murderous intent enveloped Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan subconsciously raised his saber and slashed backward. When Saber Emperor's saber was about to hit the back of his head, he blocked the saber. The force hit their faces and tore Saber Emperor's mask. However, the Dragon Tiger mask blocked the saber's attack. Swish! Saber Emperor's face appeared. It was a new face. He was very young, stern, and cruel. Even his eyes were condensed with the holy saber. He pressed down from above while Yi Qinghan resisted from below. The ground beneath his feet cracked. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. However, this change was too fast. Zeng 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 zeng. Yi Qinghan kept retreating. He wanted to dissipate the impact and reduce the pressure. However, Saber Emperor was closing in on him, not giving him any time to counterattack. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. His soul rotated. His fighting strength was very rich. It was all obtained from killing on the battlefield. Every experience he gained could save his life. Yi Qinghan suddenly let go. He didn't even want his saber anymore. He flipped his body and reversed the trajectory of space-time. His body circled behind Saber Emperor. Based on his feelings, he waved his hand and grabbed Saber Emperor's battle robe. His body suddenly erupted with a terrifying power. He directly lifted Saber Emperor up. Yi Qinghan turned around to face Saber Emperor. His left hand grabbed the saber in Saber Emperor's hand. His right hand clenched into a fist and sank down. He used the inch strike to explode 70 to 80% of his strength and ruthlessly slammed into Saber Emperor's back. This move was more than risky. If Saber Emperor was a little faster or had more fighting experience, he would have pierced Yi Qinghan's chest when he let go. Saber Emperor was punched in the back. His spine was broken. In the end, he still didn't understand why Yi Qinghan would give up his saber. Wasn't it said that the saber wouldn't be abandoned until the person died? This was the dignity of a saber supremacy. However, in Yi Qinghan's opinion, the dignity of a saber supremacy was to save his life. Crack! Yi Qinghan's inch strike broke the Saber Emperor's spine with a single punch. Yi Qinghan once again changed from a fist to a palm, and once again used the inch strike to strike the Saber Emperor's back. His speed was too fast, and all his movements were executed in an instant. Saber Emperor spat out blood and crashed into the ground. Before he could struggle, Yi Qinghan locked his throat. Chapter 2759. The Saber Emperor had lost, not because of his moves or his understanding of the Emperor's techniques, but because of his humanity and his honor. The philosophy he had accepted was that the saber was his life. If he threw away the saber, it was the same as throwing away his life. The saber was his honor. If he threw away the saber, it was the same as throwing away his honor. The saber was his honor. If he threw away the saber, it was the same as throwing away his honor. He had always respected the saber in his hand and thought that his opponent, Yi Qinghan, would also respect the saber. Yi Qinghan only had one philosophy, and that was life. If he lost his life, he would have nothing left. What honor and honor, they were all bullshit. If you want to live, you have to cherish your life. If you don't even have your life, what will you use to maintain your honor and honor? Yi Qinghan grabbed the saber emperor's throat and said coldly, "Your understanding and usage of the saber is not inferior to mine. You only lost to yourself, lost to your honor, and also to the person who taught you how to use the saber. Submit to me and I will guarantee your life." The saber emperor struggled, but his hand and throat holding the saber were tightly held. He could not move at all. "No. Impossible. I can't throw away the honor of an emperor even if I die." The saber emperor's face was ferocious as he said painfully. Yi Qinghan said disdainfully, "What a joke. To the enemy, the honor of an emperor is nothing but death. There is no honor. Just like Yen Zhu, is there any honor for your elite hall? His corpse has already been divided. What does he have to protect his honor? I've seen 2 corpses of ancient gods and ancient immortals, but they are only SOS. Where is the honor and honor from?" The saber emperor was unwilling. He did not expect to lose. However, after this battle, he understood a lot. If he was given another chance, he was confident that he could kill Yi Qinghan and even break his Dao heart. But he did not have the chance. "I'll give you one more chance. Submit and you can become an emperor. If you don't submit, die." Yi Qinghan shouted sternly. The saber emperor, without hesitation, roared, "I choose death." Crack. Boom! Yi Qinghan directly crushed his throat and did not ask a second time. His throat was crushed, and he immediately threw a punch at his head. Since he could destroy the fake Taigu Emperor's soldiers with a single punch, how could he not destroy a head? Bang! The saber emperor, a paragon of his generation, died tragically on the spot. His body was torn into pieces. Boom! Yi Qinghan casually flung the saber monarch into the emperor mausoleum cave. His killing intent soared to the sky as he stared at the last axe monarch. He slowly took off his mask, revealing his cold and ferocious face. "How many elites like you do Class 1 Hall have?" Yi Qinghan asked quietly. Axe monarch was not afraid at all. Since he had accepted the mission, he had never thought of returning alive. Every time he went out, he would risk his life. Back then, so many people had gathered, but in the end, only a few had survived. He had already seen through death. "Not much, but enough to kill you. If it wasn't," Axe Monarch replied hoarsely. However, he stopped halfway through his sentence. There were many layers to his words. Yi Qinghan stared at Axe Monarch and asked coldly, "If not what?" The Axe Emperor snorted coldly. He crushed the rocks with his giant axe and slowly walked towards Yi Qinghan. However, when he was halfway there, his body shook and he stopped. "Come back. Let him find Yen Zhu's heart first." A voice rang in Axe Monarch's mind. Whoosh! At the moment Axe Monarch received the order, he quickly disappeared from the spot and left the battlefield. Yi Qinghan and immortal Emperor Qingzun were stunned. They did not expect him to escape. They did not know that Axe Monarch was not escaping. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and appeared in front of Chu Shixian. He flipped his hand and took out a medicine bottle. Inside was a healing emperor pill. Crack! Yi Qinghan crushed the emperor pill and split it in half. He gave one half to Chu Shixian and swallowed the other half. Boom boom boom. His blood surged and rushed to his limbs and bones. His injuries were rapidly recovering. Even the dead flesh attached to the emperor pill was being repaired. Chu Shixian's injuries were recovering even faster. His wounds healed quickly. His combat strength and realm had undergone a qualitative change after this battle. He had profited from a disaster. If he did not die, there would be great fortune. Hoo, dong dong dong. Chu Shixian lay on the ground and breathed out a few mouthfuls of turbid air. His fingertips trembled and his strength was quickly recovering. What? Chu Shixian sat up with lingering fear. He patted his chest and said, "I survived." "Thank you, brother." Yi Qinghan had just recovered. His face was pale. The first battle was easy, but the second battle was indeed dangerous. He had almost died. It seemed like he could not underestimate the heroes of the world. He had to reorganize his cultivation technique and create a technique that belonged to him and that he could use to his fullest potential. Yi Qinghan breathed out a mouthful of turbid air and said softly, "You don't have to be so courteous. The other party came for me. You were just implicated." The three were silent for a moment. Then they said in unison, "Why do you think Axe the Arch fled?" Axe the Arch's combat strength was definitely not inferior to Saber the Arch and Sword the Arch. However, he did not attack and left. Furthermore, he was prepared to enter the battlefield. The more Yi Qinghan thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. Yi Qinghan shook his head and said, "He did not flee. If he did not receive an order, then he left on his own accord. He had something more important to do." "I keep feeling that we have been tricked." Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and looked at the sky. Everything was blocking his vision, and he could not see through anything. In the small plane, he could still guess or control the situation, but now, he did not even know who else was in Class 1 Hall. Why did they not forcefully crush his Dao heart? I don't like this feeling either. Whether it is our whereabouts or anything else, we are all exposed to the eyes of others. However, we know so little about the enemy. Chu Shijungxian said in a low voice. Immortal Emperor Qingzun was silent. This battle had nothing to do with him. He could have stood aside. However, he wanted to use Yi Qinghan to take the risk and enter the imperial mausoleum. He could obtain many things and his chances of becoming an emperor were increasing. The path to survival is on the way? Yi Qinghan recalled Emperor Liang's advice. He could not figure out where his heart was. It is on the way. Isn't it a path wherever I go? Yi Qinghan clenched his fists. A cold light flashed. He suddenly made a decision. Let's return to the undying immortal world. I have to investigate some things first. Faced with Yi Qinghan's sudden decision, Chu Shijungxian and Immortal Emperor Qingzun did not have the chance to object. This was because no one could change Yi Qinghan's decision. At this moment, the multicolored snake actually devoured the Saber Emperor's flesh and blood. Only his skeleton was left. It slid down the mountain side by side and started to devour Emperor Li's corpse. Yi Qinghan frowned at the multicolored snake. This thing was not only wretched, but also had a strong taste. It even ate humans. He was afraid that this thing would even eat the crazed immortal manor in the end. However, after this thing ate the flesh and blood of the three experts, its aura became even more sinister and strong. It was approaching the fourth form of the primordial realm. It would not take much effort to devour ordinary fourth form experts. After a long time, the multicolored snake transformed back into a human. Its mouth was full of blood and it looked extremely savage. Don't eat human flesh in the future. What's your habit? Yi Qinghan frowned and warned. The multicolored snake immediately changed its attitude and said flatteringly, "Boss, they are all dead. It would be a waste to keep them alive. Moreover, I know my limits. I will never eat the living or my teammates." What? Yi Qinghan could not be bothered to say more. He waved his hand and kept the God-Devourer eagle, the multicolored snake, and the star-twining vine. He said, "Let's go back." What? Xiao, that the three of them were extremely fast. They rushed towards the connecting point between the ancient immortal world and the undying immortal world. At this moment, three young people came from the undying immortal world. They were all wearing masks. Their clothes and outfits were exactly the same as the Saber Emperor. They were also from the elite hall. However, based on their aura, these three were stronger than the Saber Emperor. They sped along without saying a word. Chapter 2760. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Yi Qinghan had been training in the ancient immortal world for a long time, so he was very familiar with the place. His speed was getting faster and faster, and he was unstoppable. In a short 30 years he had traversed endless territories from the Demon Emperor's territory to the entrance of the ancient immortal world and the undying immortal world. He tore open the spatial node and returned to the undying immortal world. At this time, the undying immortal world's Crying Ghost Ridge's 5 million strong army had stopped the ancient gods and ancient immortals for thousands of years. They had suffered many casualties, but even more so, especially after Mount Jingfan's return. Crazed Manor's power had increased by quite a bit. After 3,000 years of recuperation, Crazed Manor's combat strength had undergone a qualitative transformation. Luckily, they had lost a few peripheral members in the battle at Mount Liang, but after that battle, everyone had become much stronger. In the 3,000 years since Yi Qinghan left, they had survived many calamities on their own. On this day, 3 masked youths came to Crying Ghost Ridge. Their appearance shocked the ancient gods and ancient immortals so much that they bowed and retreated, not daring to blaspheme their dignity. The 3 glared coldly at the ancient gods and ancient immortals. They didn't need to say anything to let everyone know what they meant. A bunch of trash. Even the emperor's inheritances were looked down upon, but no one dared to say anything because they represented the strongest faction in the ancient immortal world, the First Hall. Why can't we kill a bunch of ants after so long? Can anyone give me a reasonable explanation? One of the youths with a triangular weapon imprint on his forehead looked coldly at the 5 elders of the previous generation. He was clearly questioning them. But the 5 elders from the previous generation couldn't get angry, even though they were angry. The enemy's strength is one thing, but there's a divine general's inheritance causing trouble in the rear and restricting our main forces. One of the elders snorted. The youth with the triangular weapon imprint turned to the 2 beside him. Seems like we have to settle our internal problems before dealing with external problems. It's time to clean house. As for the other 2, one had a staff imprint and the other a cauldron, representing their inheritances techniques. The Great Tao Edge Weapon, Heaven's Shocking Rod, Quadrangular Cauldron. Those who were familiar with the primordial era knew that the Great Tao Edge Weapon represented the primordial Tao overgods, the Quadrangular Cauldron represented the martial Tao overgods, and the Heaven's Shocking Rod represented the Heaven's Shocking Immortal Emperor. Hearing that these 3 wanted to kill Luo Wuhan, many ancient gods and ancient immortals were wild with joy. This was especially so for Gong Zichuan, who immediately went forward and said, "That divine general Dim Darkness betrayed Master first, and then helped the Yen clan. This is definitely not a coincidence because there is someone standing behind him. I just don't know if the 3 of you dare to kill him. Young Master has bad intentions and wants to kill someone with a borrowed knife." The expert with the harp weapon imprint silently glanced at Gong Zichun. How could he not know that Gong Zichun wanted to kill him with a borrowed knife? However, since the other party wanted to help the Yen clan, there was no harm in helping Gong Zichun get rid of them. Who is it? The expert with the rhombus weapon mark asked silently. The inheritor of the primordial divinity over God, Gu Jiutian, currently in the 4th state. Moreover, there is an expert behind her, the dean of the ancient Emperor Academy, Gu Tiendi. Gong Zichuan said coldly. This time, the pupils of the rhombus weapon mark, Heaven's Shocking Rod, and Quadrangular Cauldron's inheritors shrank. Gu Tiendi was a divine general, and he had hidden a lot of power. Many times, Class 1 Hall had extended an olive branch to him to report back, but he had rejected them all. It seemed that he would not give up until he became an emperor. Everyone in Class 1 Hall knew that this person was not to be trifled with. He had once stolen Gu Jiutian's mother's inheritance, but he was not willing to reveal it. Class 1 Hall had long since found out, but there was no direct evidence. Gu Tiendi had hidden himself very deeply these years. You want to use me to kill Gu Tiendi? The rhombus weapon mark's killing intent flashed as he asked coldly. Gong Zichuan calmly replied, "Don't slander me. I am also a dignified inheritor of an emperor. Even if you are an impure inheritor of an emperor. You only have the right to talk to me because you are from Class 1 Hall. However, don't forget your identity and blaspheme the Taigu Emperor." The rhombus weapon mark's inheritor clenched his iron fist, and a great Tao rhombus weapon appeared in his hand. Although it was a replica, its power did not lose to the real great Tao rhombus weapon. The Heaven's Shocking Rod mark's inheritor pulled back the rhombus weapon mark's inheritor and gently shook his head. He whispered, "Don't be impulsive. The mission is more important." Gong Zichuan and the rhombus weapon mark's inheritor coldly snorted at the same time. It seemed that the hatred between the true inheritors of an emperor's bloodline and the ones cultivated by Class 1 Hall was quite great. Brother Young Master is speaking the truth. If you don't dare to clean up the mess, then go back and report. We won't laugh at you. Another inheritor of an emperor's inheritor from the previous generation said coldly. Crack. Gu Jiutian is Gu Jiutian, the ancient heavenly emperor is the ancient heavenly emperor, and the inheritor of the divine general of darkness is the inheritor of the divine general of darkness. There is no definite connection between the three. We can't listen to the nonsense of these people. Let's find Gu Jiutian and the inheritor of the divine general of darkness, Luo Wuhan, and ask them. If the two of them really dare to help the Yen clan, then we will clean them up. As for the ancient heavenly emperor, we have no evidence that he betrayed the faith of the ancient gods and ancient immortals. The other two nodded immediately. However, before they left, they coldly glanced at Gong Zichuan and the others, as if warning them. It seemed that there was some enmity between them. Bush, 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 bush. The three of them took the air and sped towards the rear. At this moment, Gu Jiutian and the Underworld General's inheritor were at the Martial Arts Record System's headquarters. The news came quickly. When the Rhombus Weapon Mark's inheritor and the others appeared, the two of them received the news. When the three experts rushed toward the Martial Arts Record System's headquarters, the two of them knew that things were not good. However, they did not think of retreating. In the past 3,000 years, the two of them had not been idle. Luo Wuhan's cultivation had not only improved, but he had also completely refined the godhood. His fighting strength was close to the Underworld General's, and he had also comprehended the immemorial origin immortal canon's sword art. He was even stronger than the Underworld General. Gu Jiutian was blessed by the heavens. His bloodline seemed to be showing signs of returning to its ancestral roots, allowing him to cultivate with twice the result with half the effort. He already had the temperament of the immemorial divine will master god when he was young. The underworld flood dragon had devoured countless resources in the martial arts record system. Its hidden injuries had all been healed, and its fighting strength was even higher. It was one of the few existences that had participated in the immemorial war. Gu Jiutian coldly snorted and said, "Send someone to inform my father. It's up to him whether he comes or not." Luo Wuhan's expression was indifferent, but he still sent someone to inform the ancient Emperor Academy. The ancient celestial emperor had been very low-key in recent years. He was no longer as high-profile as he was in the past. He seemed to have comprehended something and had not appeared for 3,000 years. However, just as the news was sent out, 3 terrifying auras enveloped the martial arts record system's headquarters. No one dared to move half a step. It was as if they had fallen into someone else's domain. Anyone who dared to move would undoubtedly die. Whoosh! Whoosh! Gu Jiutian and Luo Wuhan flew through the air and appeared outside the martial arts record system's headquarters. They looked at the 3 experts with sharp gazes, and they were unwilling to retreat. Chapter 2761. That there were countless living beings in the huge main city, but Lin Bing and the other 2 didn't care at all. They pressed forward and asked, "Are you 2 helping the Yen clan?" Gu Jiutian didn't answer. She glanced at Luo Wuhan and said coldly, "If you have something to say, say it outside the city." Whoosh! Gu Jiutian soared into the sky and rushed out of the main city in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! Hum! Luo Wuhan turned into a dragon and rushed out of the city. The 3 experts followed closely behind, but they didn't attack. After all, one was an Archean direct descendant, and the other was a divine general descendant. They didn't dare to act rashly without solid evidence. Whoosh! The 5 experts swooped down from the void, and in a moment, they were thousands of miles away from the city. Boom! The 5 experts landed on the desert and faced each other with murderous intent. "I'm asking you a question. Are you helping the Yen clan?" Lung Bing's inheritor asked coldly. Gu Jiutian looked at Lung Bing's inheritor coldly. She, who had a gentle temper, said coldly, "Who do you think you are? Since when did you have the right to question my actions? Did Class 1 Hall teach people like you who go against their superiors in this generation?" Lung Bing and the other 2 inheritors were stunned. In terms of status, They weren't as good as Gu Jiutian, but in this generation, Lin Bing and the other inheritors were generally stronger than the orthodox emperors and overgods inheritors, which made them a little impetuous. They even thought that they could replace the orthodox inheritors, and the latter was suppressed and didn't dare to resist. Others didn't dare to resist, but it didn't mean that Gu Jiutian didn't dare to resist. At this moment, a real overgod's aura enveloped the three of them, suppressing them with a high status. Did the elders ask you to question me, or did you three go against your superiors and act on your own accord? Gu Jiutian asked. Lung Bing and the other inheritors' auras stagnated. They were somewhat unwilling to retort and reply. The pressure from their noble bloodline and orthodox status made them suffer. Gu Jiutian looked down at the three of them and said coldly, "If the elders didn't teach you how to respect the orthodox, then I will tell you today why you are called Master God weapons or Imperial weapon inheritances, while I am called Primordial Master God inheritances. I, Gu Jiutian, have been blessed by the heavens. My bloodline comes from the inheritance of my ancestor, the Primordial Core God. You have received grace from the Primordial Core God Hall, and your inheritance comes from Imperial weapons or Core God weapons. To put it bluntly, I am the main palace, and you are the side palace. Don't you know what's important and what's not? You." The inheritor of the edged weapon was instantly enraged. The edged weapon of the great Tao shone with divine light, and it actually possessed the might of a sovereign. Gu Jiutian was even more powerful. His chief god divine core directly floated in the air, and the might of a chief god surged through the sky and spread thousands of miles away. It was as if the primordial divine will chief god had arrived in person, and it was inviolable. The inheritor of the heaven's startling staff and the four corners cauldron immediately bowed and cupped their fists. Disciple of the first hall greets the divine will chief god's inheritor. The edged weapon's inheritor's expression was cold. Refusing to greet Gu Jiutian meant that he was disrespecting the primordial core god. The heaven's startling staff and the four corners cauldron immediately pulled the edged weapon's inheritor back, indicating that he shouldn't lose sight of the bigger picture. Today, if he didn't greet Gu Jiutian and the primordial core god's divine core, it would be the same as blaspheming the primordial core god. Even if Gu Jiutian had colluded with the enemy, he would still be in trouble. The edged weapon's inheritor's expression was ferocious as he gritted his teeth. He wanted nothing more than to kill Gu Jiutian with one palm, but now that the primordial core god's divine core had appeared, he was afraid. In the end, the edged weapon's inheritor gritted his teeth and cupped his fists. Disciple of the first hall, edged weapon's inheritor, greets the divine will chief god's inheritor. Gu Jiutian and Luo Wuhan's eyes met. Luo Wuhan slowly let out a sigh of relief. Once he was convicted of colluding with the enemy, he wouldn't be able to live even if he ran to the ends of the earth. The first hall wouldn't forgive him, so he couldn't let this crime be committed today. The edged weapon and the other two inheritors were waiting respectfully. Without Gu Jiutian's order, they didn't dare to stand up straight. After a long time, Gu Jiutian quietly asked, "I really want to know who told you that I colluded with the Yen clan. Take out the evidence, or I'll go to the first hall today to reason. Although the divine will chief god of my clan is dead, his bloodline cannot be insulted. Back then, my clan's chief god died in battle, and now you're accusing me of colluding with the enemy. I'm afraid you won't be able to bear this crime." The three experts immediately pushed the blame away. The heaven-shaking staff's inheritor immediately said, "Your Highness, you've misunderstood. This matter wasn't said by us, but by the 5 previous emperors' inheritors and the primordial core god's inheritors. If your Highness is innocent, we'll go to the Crying Ghost Ridge to confront you. If your Highness is really guilty of colluding with the enemy, then surrender and come with us to the first hall to admit your guilt. As for how to deal with this matter, the hall master and the elders will be there. It's not up to us to decide." Gu Jiutian gave Luo Wuhan a look, indicating that he shouldn't act rashly. If they wanted to convict them of colluding with the enemy, they must first have witnesses and evidence. If they didn't have evidence, then everything would be a groundless accusation. When the time came, who knew who would be punished? Let's go. Today, I want to see who can prove that I colluded with the enemy. Gu Jiutian gestured with his hand. The three of you lead the way. Whoosh. The three experts immediately soared into the sky, followed by Gu Jiutian and Luo Wuhan. They didn't fall behind at all, and even seemed to be competing. Everyone wanted to leave the other behind. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 5 flames streaked across the sky, heading straight for the Crying Ghost Ridge. Originally, it would have taken a long time, but because the 5 were unwilling to admit defeat, the time was shortened to half. Boom. The 5 landed in front of the Crying Ghost Ridge almost at the same time. Bang. Crack. Crack. The 5 shattered the ground, but it was obvious that Gu Jiutian and the Heaven-Shaking Staff's inheritor had the best control over their strength, while the 4-sided cauldron's inheritor was the fastest and had the purest divine power. After flying for so long, there wasn't even the slightest ripple. Luo Wuhan was a divine general's inheritor, after all, so he was somewhat suppressed. However, he didn't use the dark python serpent's power. Otherwise, it would be hard to tell who would win. As soon as the 5 appeared, Gong Zichun and the others' eyes flashed fiercely, and they rushed forward to kill Luo Wuhan. The edge weapon's inheritor was in a bad mood. With a cold snort, he raised his eyes and stared at Gong Zichun. Your Highness Gongzi, you said that His Highness Jiutian and Luo Wuhan colluded with the enemy. The 2 of them are here to confront each other. Take out your evidence, and the elders will judge everything. Evidence? Gong Zichun sneered. Ask all the ancient gods and ancient immortals. Who doesn't know that Luo Wuhan colluded with the enemy and helped the Yen clan slaughter the ancient gods and ancient immortals? Yes, we can prove that every time we attack Kuang Fu, Luo Wuhan will attack us. I can prove it too. Whoosh, whoosh. The ancient gods and ancient immortals stepped forward and pointed at Luo Wuhan. Luo Wuhan looked at this group of people with disdain. If Gu Jiutian didn't allow it, he would have started a massacre long ago. Life and death were up to fate. Gu Jiutian sneered. You only have witnesses to prove that we colluded with the enemy? Then I can find tens of millions of witnesses to prove that the Yen clan betrayed us ancient gods and ancient immortals. Otherwise, I can't imagine that so many experts can't even break through a small conquering heaven camp. Chapter 2762. Gu Jiutian's words almost made Gong Zichuan and the others jump up in anger. They almost pointed at Gu Jiutian and scolded him. This was a classic case of the guilty party complaining about the victim first. How could all the ancient gods and immortals lie? Are you representing Class 1 Hall or not? Instead of cleaning up this shameless brat, you dragged him here to confront him. Are you doubting all the ancient gods and immortals? Gong Zichuan roared. Without waiting for Lung Bing and the others to speak, Gu Jiutian retorted, What a joke! Are you representing all the ancient gods and immortals? Are all the followers of my divine will lineage here? Is the lineage of the Space Master God here? What right do you have to represent the ancient gods and ancient immortals? Besides, does attacking you mean betraying the clan? Are there no grudges between the ancient gods? Divine General Wu Hen had just received the inheritance and was attacked by several ancient god inheritors. Is he not allowed to take revenge? Think about it. Apart from attacking the Lightning Master God's lineage, the 5 Elements Master God's lineage, and the Great Solar Flaming Destruction inheritance, has Luo Wuhan attacked anyone else? When he was attacked, did he kill anyone? When did he not retreat? Gu Jiutian was fine when he didn't lose his temper, but when he did, he would scold anyone he saw. He even scolded the old guys from the previous generation. Moreover, these words were quite insulting. Most importantly, he was right. Why couldn't it be a personal revenge? Gong Zichuan looked at Gu Jiutian and Luo Wuhan with disdain and said coldly, Attacking those lineages is not a problem, but you two have a personal relationship with Yi Qinghan. You two have gone through life and death together. You can't deny this, can you? Gu Jiutian didn't refute. Instead, he nodded frankly and said, Yes, Divine General Wu Hen and I did have a life and death relationship with Yi Qinghan. But don't forget, at that time, Yi Qinghan wasn't from the Yen clan. We didn't know he was from the Yen clan. Ever since we found out that he was from the Yen clan, we drew a clear line between us. Besides, you attacked the crazed manor, not Yi Qinghan. Are you trying to frame me and Divine General Wu Hen for being friends with the crazed manor? Luo Wuhan coldly stared at the crowd and coldly said, "Everyone, you must be responsible for your words. You are now framing an ancient master god's successor. If it is proven that you are framing him, then you are framing the ancient master god's prestige and glory. I'm afraid that not even the extermination of your clan will be able to bear such a crime." Those who had not been attacked by Luo Wuhan immediately maintained a certain distance from the 5 previous generations of emperors' inheritors and chief gods' inheritors, no longer helping them to prove that Luo Wuhan and Gu Jiutian had betrayed their ancestors. The 5 old fellows had joined forces to eliminate the ancient heavenly emperor, which was why they had taken advantage of the situation. They wanted to use Luo Wuhan to tie down Gu Jiutian and then the ancient heavenly emperor. The ancient gods and ancient immortals were not as united as one. In order to kill their enemies, they had drawn their swords. When they saw that a large number of ancient gods and ancient immortals were not helping them, Gongzi Chun and the others' old faces instantly changed. Gu Jiutian, on the other hand, was calm. She was familiar with how Class 1 Hall was convicted. Witnesses and material evidence were the most important. As for witnesses, anyone could find a large number of people to prove that the other party had not betrayed their clan. Gongzi Chun's blood and qi churned, and the killing intent in his eyes was restrained. However, at this moment, he inwardly reminded himself that toppling the ancient heavenly emperor was the most important thing. There was no need to bicker with this little girl Gu Jiutian. Then explain to us, why did you only attack when we were attacking the Ascending Heavens camp? Aren't you clearly helping Quang Manor? Gongzi Chun coldly asked. At this moment, Luo Wuhan sneered, "I think you've really gone senile. If I wanted to take revenge, I would have to do it when you were weak. You can't expect me to charge into your encirclement alone. If you want to use this reason to convict me, I want to ask you 3 brothers of Class 1 Hall, when you take revenge, do you take revenge when the enemy has the advantage in numbers, or when the enemy is weak?" The 3 were speechless. If they chose the former, they would truly be idiots. If they chose the latter, they would be helping Luo Wuhan take the blame. The 3 of them did not speak, but Gu Jiutian said domineeringly, "His question is also what I want to ask. Can the 3 of you answer me, do you choose the former or the latter?" The inheritor of the prismatic weapon was unwilling to answer, but the inheritors of the heaven-shaking staff and the 4-sided cauldron immediately replied, "Of course we choose the latter. Since the enemy is pinned down, it is naturally the best time to strike." Gu Jiutian made a very carefree shrugging gesture, as if provoking the 5 old fellows. Asterisk huff huff huff. Asterisk the 5 old fellows were flustered and exasperated, their chests heaving up and down. In terms of the power of words, they really could not deal with a silly girl like Gu Jiutian. If you want to prove that you have nothing to do with Quang Fu and Yi Qinghan, then take advantage of the fact that the young masters of Class 1 Hall are here and cooperate with us to attack the heaven-conquering camp. Let's try to defeat them in one fell swoop and kill everyone from Quang Fu, Gongzi Chun suddenly said with a sinister smile. Gu Jiutian's eyes narrowed, and she decided to act unruly and domineeringly replied, "Who do you think you are? Why should I listen to your orders? Even my father doesn't dare to order me around." They fell into a stalemate once again. Gu Jiutian did not want to participate in the battle, so no one dared to order her around. The rules of Class 1 Hall were very important, and Gu Jiutian seemed to be very familiar with them. At this moment, the sky surged and space split. A figure stepped out of the void with a terrifying aura. It was definitely the Taigu Emperor. Dao Patroller. He was wearing a mask, but his temperament was still elegant and divine. "They can't order you around, but I wonder if this emperor can?" Dao Patroller looked down at Gu Jiutian and asked calmly. Gu Jiutian was shocked. She was familiar with the rules of Class 1 Hall, but she was not familiar with the current Class 1 Hall. This Taigu emperor was not an emperor from the primordial age, but a newly ascended one. His cultivation was only slightly weaker than the Taigu emperor of the past. If they fought with their lives on the line, they would definitely be evenly matched. Instantly, the ancient gods and ancient immortals all knelt down. Other than the 3 experts from Class 1 Hall, the 5 old fellows, and some inheritors of the emperors, Everyone else knelt down. Gu Jiutian and the others represented the 12 emperors of the primordial age. It was a rule not to bow when seeing an emperor. They could not kneel, but they could not bow. What? Gu Jiutian and the others bowed and said, "Greetings, Taigu Emperor." No need for formalities. Gu Jiutian, answer this emperor first. Can I order you around? My token is useless, but now that I'm here personally, will you listen to my orders? Dao Patroller looked down at Gu Jiutian and asked coldly. At this moment, words were useless. He could only use facts to prove his innocence. Gu Jiutian took a deep breath and bowed. This junior will listen to your orders. Good, all of you move out today. Defeat the conquering heaven camp and destroy Crazed Manor. The 3 Yen clan members of Crazed Manor must be killed. Dao Patroller said coldly. Understood. Everyone immediately bowed in response. Gu Jiutian and Dao Patroller looked at each other for a long time before bowing. Understood. Good. You killed a Yen clan member today. This emperor will uphold justice for you. Anyone who tries to frame you will be blaspheming the primordial divinity Master God. They deserve death. Dao Patroller said coldly. His, Gong Zichuan and the others gasped. They felt a stabbing pain in their spines, and they could not even straighten their backs. Chapter 2763. Gongzi Chun and the others knew that Gu Jiutian and Luo Wuhan were colluding, but they had no evidence. Once Gu Jiutian killed the Yen clansman, his old life would be over. Elder Taigu Emperor. Gongzi Chun immediately stepped forward, wanting to explain, but he was interrupted by the patroller. You don't need to explain anything now. You can explain it to me when you bring the heads of the Flame clansmen to me. Yes. Gongzi Chun and the others didn't dare to say anything else. The ancient god and ancient immortal armies were reorganized. All the experts were gathered, and the patroller was personally overseeing it. Although he couldn't do anything, he could let Gu Jiutian do it. Dong dong dong, the war drums shook the heavens, causing everyone's blood to boil. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The flags of Crazy Manor, Heaven-conquering camp, and ancient killing god fluttered. Clearly, they were ready for battle. Yen Ao controlled the elite troops of the Crazy Manor, including the inner sect, outer sect, and ancient killing god. The chess saint controlled the 5 million troops of the heaven-conquering camp. The troops were divided into 2 groups, with all the experts of the Crazy Manor acting as the vanguard and center. With Ghost Cry Ridge as the boundary, Crazy Manor would defend with all their might, and the ancient gods and ancient immortals would attack with all their might. Just as the 3 experts of Elite Hall were about to lead the army to crush Heaven-conquering camp, a figure silently appeared in front of the army, blocking the path of the ancient gods and ancient immortals. Even Lung Bing and the other 2 inheritors sucked in a cold breath. The ancient heavenly emperor. He had changed. His blood was similar to the divine will sovereign gods, and his bloodline should be atavistic. However, the other half of his blood was that of the ancient god general. Dual bloodline atavism. His aura caused everyone to tremble in fear, and they stared at the patroller with terrifying eyes. The patroller was also shocked. There was no way he didn't know the ancient heavenly emperor. The ancient heavenly emperor seemed to know him as well. I heard that someone framed my daughter for being a traitor and wanted to kill me with a borrowed knife? The ancient heavenly emperor's voice was hoarse and majestic. His heavy aura caused Gongzi Chun and the others' hair to stand on end. Beneath the Dao inspector's mask, his brows furrowed into a frown. Who would have thought that the ancient celestial emperor would have dual bloodlines in his veins, and that he would be on the path of condensing his godheads? Once he became an emperor, it would be the same as having 2 brothers become emperors at the same time. Once they joined forces, their battle prowess would be terrifying. Furthermore, he was only one person, so he would definitely become an emperor for all eternity. So it's Dao Friend Gu. You've misunderstood. There's no such thing. This emperor will personally deal with it. I guarantee that Dao Friend and Fairy Jiutian will be satisfied. The Dao patroller said in a deep voice. The ancient celestial emperor's dignified face was filled with the might of an immemorial god. The 2 different auras of the ancient celestial emperor were like 2 different personalities. At this moment, he didn't care about the Dao patrol at all. He only said coldly, "I want to know the answer now. Did my daughter betray the ancient celestial emperor? Did I betray the ancient celestial emperor too?" The Tao Patrol immediately replied firmly, "Fellow Taoist Gu naturally wouldn't betray the clan, and His Highness Ling Qianjin naturally wouldn't betray the clan." The ancient heavenly emperor put his hands behind his back and asked, "Then who is the one who framed my daughter? Not only is he framing my daughter, but he's also framing the primordial divine will sovereign God and me." Gongzi Chun was drenched in cold sweat. The strong were respected. The ancient heavenly emperor was so powerful that he could even twist black into white. The Tao Patrol looked at Gongzi Chun and the other 4 emperors' inheritors from the previous generation. They were emperors' inheritors and represented the 12 emperors of the immemorial age. Moreover, there were 5 of them, not 1. He couldn't just kill them, but if he didn't, how could the ancient heavenly emperor vent his anger? We'll talk about this after we destroy the crazed manor and go to Elite Hall in the future. What do you think? The Tao Patrol asked in a deep voice. The ancient heavenly emperor's lips curled up. He silently asked, "Tao Patrol, do you think I have the time for that?" The ancient heavenly emperor was probably the only one who dared to call himself in front of the Taigu emperor. The ancient heavenly emperor had been hiding his cultivation all this time. He even took the initiative to provoke the noble kings like a clown. He just wanted to hide the fact that he was about to become an emperor. Now that he had reached this step, with his dual bloodlines awakening and dual sovereign godheads condensing, what was he afraid of? Even if he fought with the Tao Patrol today, the Tao Patrol wouldn't be able to win. However, the ancient heavenly emperor wanted to redeem Gu Jiutian, so he wanted to avenge Gu Jiutian. This was why he was so aggressive and didn't give in. The ancient heavenly emperor naturally knew that Gu Jiutian didn't want to participate in the battle. If the Tao Patrol didn't kill Gongzi Chun and the others today, the battle wouldn't be fought. Although the Tao Patrol was very angry, he had to suppress his anger at this moment. He took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. The Tao Patrol let out a turbid breath and reminded in a low voice, "Brother Gu, how can you not know the rules of Elite Hall?" To convict them, the Hall Master has to show evidence in front of their ancestor's statue. If Jiutian doesn't kill the Yen tribe now, she won't be able to prove that Gongzi Chun and the others are framing her. So what you're saying is that he doesn't have any evidence, so he can convict my daughter with a groundless accusation, right? The ancient heavenly emperor's aura exploded. His dual chief god divine spark was maturing day by day. Although it wasn't complete yet, it was already frightening enough. The Tao Patrol sucked in a breath of cold air. He really didn't want to get into a conflict with the ancient heavenly emperor. If he fought with the ancient heavenly emperor now, wouldn't it be the same as giving away crazed manor's opportunity? That's not what I meant. The Tao Patrol was helpless and could only say in a low voice. The ancient heavenly emperor sneered. "I've ordered a group of people to accuse you of treason, but I don't have any evidence. Do you admit it?" The Tao Patrol was flustered and exasperated. "You're clearly framing me." The ancient heavenly emperor laughed loudly and pointed at Gongzi Chun and the others. "What's the difference between what they did and what I just said? You think that I'm framing you, but why don't you think that my daughter is being wronged by these people who are framing her?" Sob, sob, sob. Gu Jiutian suddenly burst into tears. He was a chief god's successor, and he was already in his 4th form, but now he was crying, "Father, I've really been wronged. It's fine if they insult me, but they can't insult the primordial psyche chief god, and they can't insult you either. You're all supreme existences, so how can they accuse you and the primordial psyche chief god?" Gu Jiutian said pitifully as if he had really been wronged. Gulp, plop, Gongzi Chun and the others gasped, and their legs gave way as they knelt on the ground. At this moment, he really didn't dare to resist anymore. After all, he didn't have an expert like the ancient heavenly emperor in his tribe. So what if he knew that Gu Jiutian and Luo Wuhan had colluded with the enemy? There was no evidence to prove that they were directly related to the Flame tribe. "I've misunderstood, Miss Jiutian. Please forgive me." The previous generation's successor had already formed his emperor's road, and he was at least a divine general. Yet he was kneeling. Everyone gasped. Only now did they understand that the one with the bigger fist was the boss. The ancient heavenly emperor had forced this group of people to kneel and apologize. Otherwise, Gongzi Chun would have been accused of insulting the primordial psyche chief god and the ancient heavenly emperor. This was a huge accusation, one that they couldn't bear. Chapter 2764. I'm so tired. That's all for today. I got my 30,000 points. I'll leave the remaining 10,000 to you guys. Although the Tao Patrol was unhappy with the ancient heavenly emperor's actions, there was nothing he could do. Are you satisfied now? The Tao Patrol asked in a low voice. The ancient heavenly emperor was even more pissed off when he saw the Tao Patrol's murderous glare. He asked, "Do you think he'll forgive me if I slap the Hall Master right now and apologize to him?" Boom. The Tao Patrol finally exploded. Ancient heavenly emperor, you've gone too far. How dare you insult the Hall Master? Do you think the Hall Master won't come out and kill you? The ancient heavenly emperor put on a fake smile and said, "You're very angry now, just like me. They insulted the primordial divinity master god and insulted me. Do you think they'll let it go just because they apologize? What do you want? Just say it." The Tao Patrol scolded impatiently. The ancient heavenly emperor looked at Gu Jiutian and smiled. "If my daughter is satisfied, I'm satisfied." Just as the two sides were in a stalemate, Yi Qinghan, Chu Shijun, and immortal Emperor Qingzun arrived at Ghost Cry Ridge. Gu Jiutian's pestering actually bought Yi Qinghan some time. Yi Qinghan looked at the stalemate between the ancient gods and ancient immortals and took the initiative to step into the center of the battlefield. This move scared Chu Shijun so much that he quickly reached out to stop him. "Boss, you're my dear boss. What are you trying to do?" Chu Shijun smiled bitterly. Yi Qinghan shrugged. "You guys go back first. I'll talk to them." Chu Shijun was really in despair. He couldn't keep up with Yi Qinghan's pace. He was in his fourth form and was at most stronger than a divine general. What did he have to talk to the Taigu Emperor? "Don't worry, they won't dare to kill me. Did you forget what Emperor Liang said? They won't dare to kill me. If they did, they would have killed me in the ancient immortal world. Why wait until now?" Yi Qinghan said confidently. With that said, Yi Qinghan did not give Chu Shijun any more chances. He walked straight to the center of the battlefield, his aura growing stronger and stronger. With each step, he ascended to the heavens. The image of a dragon and a tiger contended for supremacy in the universe. With his imposing figure, he stepped towards the ancient gods and ancient immortals. At this moment, the Tao Patrol officer and the ancient celestial the Arch were no longer in the mood to bicker. They both turned to look at the approaching Yi Qinghan. The ancient gods and ancient immortals were all dumbfounded. The person they wanted to kill the most had actually taken the initiative to come knocking on their door. Did he proclaim himself as an emperor? "Are you here to challenge the ancient heavenly emperor and the Tao patrolling elders?" All the gods and ancient immortals gasped as they looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. Yi Qinghan, on the other hand, had a smile on his face. He stopped when he was about 20 to 30 meters away from the other party's camp and said slowly, "Are you interested in a chat?" At this point, the ancient celestial emperor was frowning. He didn't know what this guy wanted to talk about with the ancient gods and ancient immortals. Shouldn't they be talking about enmity when enemies meet? Why was this guy smiling? The patrol officer frowned at Yi Qinghan and said coldly, "You're not afraid of death." Clap, clap, clap. Yi Qinghan patted his chest and pretended to be terrified as he said, "I'm afraid. I'm the one who's most afraid of death. That's why I'm here to talk to you guys." The patrol officer didn't seem to be afraid of death at all. The great Taigu Emperor was actually being toyed with by a brat. He was a little angry. If the Hall Master hadn't repeatedly warned him not to kill Yi Qinghan, he would have slapped Yi Qinghan to death long ago. "What do you want to talk about?" the ancient celestial the Arch asked. Yi Qinghan looked at the ancient celestial the Arch and the patrol officer and said indifferently, "I'm guessing that you guys can't make the decision. Why don't you let your Hall Master sit down with me and have a chat outside Crying Ghost Ridge? Who do you think you are? What right do you have to meet my Hall Master?" The patrol officer reprimanded coldly. Yi Qinghan didn't get angry. Instead, he smiled and picked up a flower. He sighed and said, Because I've survived 9 lives and 9 tribulations. That's why I'm sure that you guys won't dare to kill me or send me out of the 5 elements. I won't be bound by the order of 10,000 laws. The patrol officer looked at Yi Qinghan coldly. He didn't expect that Yi Qinghan had also received this news. Let me put it this way. I'm not interested in being a tribulation taker, nor do I want to destroy the ancient gods and ancient immortals. I'm not crazy. What's the point of killing people? Back in the day, the Yen tribe and the ancient gods and ancient immortals both suffered heavy losses. There's no need to talk about hatred, just mutual hatred. Let's just take a step back and forget about it. Besides, I've killed several archaic overgods inheritors in this life. It's time for this hatred to dissipate. There's no point in continuing this stalemate. The ancient immortal world and the eternal immortal world are big enough for us to coexist and prosper together, isn't that right? Was this a tribulation taker? The patrol officer suddenly had some doubts. Was a tribulation taker supposed to be like this? According to the story, shouldn't this guy fight to the death with the ancient gods and ancient immortals? Why would this alien star be so shameless and compromise? He didn't even want to avenge the blood of his ancestors. Are you joking with me? The patrol officer asked. Yi Qinghan slowly took off his mask and looked at the patrol officer. He said coldly, although you killed reincarnation Shakyamuni and cut off Yen Emperor's resurrection, do I look like I'm joking with you? Ha! The ancient heavenly emperor laughed. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to be this kind of person. When 2 armies were fighting, he, as the commander, actually ran to the enemy camp to chat. However, Yi Qinghan wasn't the first person to do this. The first person to do this was his spiritual pet, Divine Bird Supreme Yi. Yi Qinghan slowly retreated with his mask. He said indifferently, "You can go back and report to your hall master that if you want to talk, I welcome you. If you don't want to talk, I'll accompany you to the end. You don't dare to kill me. You can't destroy my Tao heart. When I break through 10 lives and 10 tribulations, don't blame me for being impolite." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Whoosh. Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and retreated, leaving the ancient gods and immortals looking at each other in shock. At the same level, they couldn't defeat Yi Qinghan. At the same level, they could kill Yi Qinghan. However, if they sent Yi Qinghan to 10 tribulations and 10 lifetimes, they would send him out of the 5 elements and he wouldn't be bound by any laws. At that time, no one would be able to defeat him. He was an unkillable cockroach. Yi Qinghan's luck might be really good, but it was all because of Swanpadian. It was Swanpadian who sent Yi Qinghan to 9 lifetimes and 9 tribulations. Yi Qinghan calmly entered the enemy camp and retreated calmly back to Crying Ghost Ridge. The army roared, the war flags swayed, and the war drums boomed non-stop. Yi Qinghan raised the mask in his hand and proudly returned. Everyone from Crazy Manor came forward to welcome him, but they didn't understand how Yi Qinghan made the patrol officer not dare to attack. Chu Shijue also came. He frowned and asked in a low voice, "Why did you come back if you didn't get the heart?" Yi Qinghan looked straight at Chu Shijue and didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "I want to know where Emperor Liang's corpse is. I want to find clues from his corpse. Otherwise, in such a big ancient immortal world, where can I find the heart?" Chapter 2765. Emperor Liang's Corpse. Chu Shijue sucked in a breath of cold air. Emperor Liang had left when he was about to breathe his last, leaving behind only one sentence. Where could he find the corpse now? Looking at Chu Shijue's expression, Yi Qinghan's heart turned cold. If the heart was on Emperor Liang's body, he might not be able to find it even if he searched for a lifetime. Sigh. Yi Qinghan sighed and rubbed his forehead. At this moment, he really had a splitting headache. There were too many things that he couldn't predict or control. The people of Quang Manor felt their hearts ache when they saw this, but they couldn't help much. The real battle was of the highest level. The older generation of Quang Manor was indeed strong, but they weren't strong enough to defy the heavens. They couldn't even be compared to Yi Qinghan. They couldn't even handle the disciples of Class 1 Hall, let alone the Taigu Emperor. "Boss, there's no need to be so tired. Let nature take its course. I believe that there's always a way out." Yan Ao took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly. This time was different from the past. If they didn't fight to the death, they would be killed. If they relaxed a little, they might be defeated by the disciples of Class 1 Hall. The key was that Quang Manor didn't even have the Taigu Emperor standing behind them. What was the backup plan? Yan Ao could be considered a backup plan, but he hadn't completely grasped Ancestor Yan's human Tao. Otherwise, it would be equivalent to the number 1 emperor in the world personally coming, comparable to the Taigu Emperor's patrol. However, there was still the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall standing behind the patrol. Now, there was also the ancient Heavenly Emperor with dual godhead. What did Quang Manor have? Yi Qinghan's eyes were lifeless as he lay on the chair. Thinking of these problems, his eyes were filled with helplessness. Divine Bird ran out, also feeling sorry for Yi Qinghan. This time, there was really no way out, so he suggested, "Boss, let's escape. Dismiss expedition to Heaven Camp, bring the people from Arrogant Manor back to planet Dark Moon, and tear down Blood Bone World Marker. I refuse to believe that Class 1 Hall will cross the universe to fight against us." Looking at the serious expression on the Divine Bird's face, Yi Futian's suggestion was a good idea if the Divine Bird wanted to live. However, he was unwilling to leave just like that. There were no resources there, nothing at all. It was a little cruel to let so many people in the Quang Manor give up on seeking the Tao. Yi Qinghan took the letter from his bosom and said in a low voice, "Call the chess sage over. Have a look at this letter and see if you can find anything." Yan Ao was the first to receive it. After reading it carefully, his eyes focused on the last sentence. "Is there a way out?" The corner of Yan Ao's eyes twitched. He silently pondered, trying to figure out the meaning of Emperor Liang's words. Then, the Divine Bird took the letter and looked at it for a long time. He scratched his head and said firmly, "Boss, Emperor Liang means for us to run. Look, the meaning of the last sentence is not very clear. Is there a way out? It means that if we want to live, we have to run quickly." Yi Qinghan rolled his eyes. Even Yan Ao sneered. If that was what Emperor Liang meant, it would be too funny. The older generation of the Quang Manor took the letter. After reading it carefully, they did not have a good explanation. After a while, the chess sage came over with a calm expression. He seemed to be a true sage. There was almost no fluctuation in his emotions. He reached out and took the letter. In the end, his eyes were fixed on the last sentence. That's a very vague sentence. Overall, it's nonsense. I think it's meant for you not to give up. He didn't tell you any clues about the whereabouts of the heart, Chess Saint said with certainty. That's right. Chu Shijue's expression was somewhat ugly. The chess sage actually dared to say that Emperor Liang's advice was nonsense. Chu Shijue snorted coldly and said unhappily, "It's normal for us mortals to not understand Emperor Liang's meaning and state of mind, but don't blaspheme his meaning." The chess sage glanced at Chu Shijue coldly and handed the letter back to Yi Qinghan. He shook his head gently, indicating that he did not agree with Chu Shijue's meaning. It seemed that he still firmly agreed with his opinion. The last sentence was really meaningless. A normal person would definitely not give up in order to survive. At that moment, Supreme Yi snatched the letter and pointed at a sentence on it. "Boss, look at this sentence. You are the savior of the 9 lifetimes and 9 tribulations. Once you break through the 10 lifetimes and 10 tribulations, you will transcend the 5 elements and will not be bound by the laws of the world. Why don't you die once?" Slap. Yi Qinghan sat up and slapped the back of Supreme Ye's head. He said speechlessly, "Why don't you die?" Emperor Liang said that it's only a possibility. If I gamble with a 50% probability, it's equivalent to gambling with the lives of the Yen clan, the Quang Manor, and everyone else. Am I crazy? Supreme Yi stuck out his tongue and grinned. At that moment, Yan Ao suddenly said firmly, "I agree with the chess sage's meaning. This sentence has no other meaning, so there's no need to waste time and energy on this letter. Instead, it will distract your energy and make you more tired." However, Chu Shijue and Chu Shijungxian naturally did not believe that their ancestor would leave behind a sentence that resolutely disagreed with Yan Ao and the chess sage. They still believed that Yi Qinghan returning to the ancient immortal world to find his heart was the only way to survive. Yi Qinghan sank into deep thought. If he returned now, the Kuang Manor would have even less hope. In order to survive, he would lose the Kuang Manor. This was not something he could accept. Yi Qinghan pondered for a long time before saying, I want to see the Hall Master of Elite Hall first. The other party won't dare to kill me now. If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. If we can negotiate, I'd rather give up on my hatred. Although Yen Ao was full of hatred, he was the true successor of the Yen clan, the backup left behind by the Yen ancestor, and the person the Yen emperor was waiting for. However, at this moment, he stood firmly behind Yi Qinghan. If giving up on his hatred could save the Kuang Manor and the Yen clan, he would rather give up on his hatred. I'll listen to boss. Yen Ao said in a deep voice. The chess sage nodded and said, Emperor Liang's meaning is very clear. The other party is indeed afraid that Yi will slaughter the ancient gods and ancient immortals and break the legacies of the two clans. If we can negotiate, the other party can also eliminate their hatred. This choice is not a bad choice. At least, it can stall for time. Sigh. When Chu Shijue saw that the Kuang Manor wanted to negotiate, he could only sigh and choose to turn around and leave. At this moment, Chu Shijue was very hesitant. Although Yi Qinghan's decision was crazy, he had succeeded so far. Since there was no way to stop this final decision, he chose to believe it. It was normal to take a gamble. Let's take it one step at a time, Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. At this moment, in Elite Hall, the patrol officer returned and told the hall master of Yi Qinghan's intentions. Then, the white-haired hall master remained silent for a long time. Hall master, do we negotiate? The patrol officer asked. The hall master of Elite Hall's face was hidden under the mask. No expression could be seen. His calm eyes continued to stare at the sky. I did not expect him to be such a tribulation taker. I just don't know if his thoughts are just expedient or sincere. However, we can negotiate. We can also compete head-on. If we can use this opportunity to force out the Yen ancestors' final arrangement, that would be for the best, the hall master said. Chapter 2766. In the boundless universe, the floating elite hall was majestic. To the ancient gods and ancient immortals, this was a place of virtue and prestige. The threshold was terrifyingly high. Those who weren't divine generals and immortal generals didn't even have the right to enter. The hall master wanted to use this opportunity to force out the Yen ancestors' trump card. If he had the chance, he could even force Yi Qinghan to commit suicide to prevent future troubles. Once he committed suicide, Yi Qinghan's Tao heart would shatter, and he wouldn't be able to break through the 10 lives and 10 tribulations. The ancient heavenly emperor is still unwilling to see me? The hall master asked. The Tao inspector shook his head and said helplessly, this person hid his battle prowess well. He's been playing the fool in the Void Ridge, challenging people everywhere. I didn't expect his strength to be comparable to the Taigu Emperor. He's already condensed 2 master godhoods, and he's only 1 step away. I can't imagine how powerful he'll be once he steps into the ancient god realm. The hall master was silent for a while, then said in a low voice, he's the first person to step out of my expectations. However, he's an ancient god, so there won't be any trouble. Don't worry about him for now. He won't be able to reach the heavens. Ancient Emperor Academy. The ancient heavenly emperor had returned, but Gu Jiutian and Luo Wuhan had followed him. The ancient heavenly emperor looked at his daughter and Luo Wuhan sternly and said, from today onwards, you're not allowed to have any contact with Yi Qinghan. If you have to fight, you have to fight. Colluding with the enemy and betraying the clan is not something the elite hall can tolerate. Moreover, this involves the great matter of whether the ancient gods and ancient immortals' legacies are broken. If anyone dares to mess around at this time, the elite hall will definitely kill them. Luo Wuhan and Gu Jiutian nodded. This time, they had helped Yi Qinghan stall for so long and even delayed his return. They had already repaid the favor, so they didn't have to worry about it anymore. Yes, father? Gu Jiutian called the ancient heavenly emperor, father, seriously for the first time. The ancient heavenly emperor smiled and reached out to stroke Gu Jiutian's head. he said in a hoarse voice. Junin, you will understand your father in the future. Sometimes, it is necessary to sacrifice some people. I feel very guilty, but I have no other choice. Gu Jiutian didn't understand, but he didn't want to hate the ancient heavenly emperor anymore. The ancient heavenly emperor wasn't heartless after all. For her sake, he was willing to interrupt his cultivation at the most critical moment just to go to the ghost whale exception to patrol the path. She was touched by his sincerity. Luo Wuhan stood to the side without saying a word. At this moment, he probably only wanted to assist Gu Jiutian in becoming an emperor. The ancient heavenly emperor looked at the two and reminded them in a deep voice, "You don't have much time left. The future world still belongs to the Taigu Emperor. So, you two can stay in the ancient heavenly emperor academy and cultivate diligently. I am going to enter the final stage. Also, I left behind two backups, Li Peiza and Su Zhan. They have received my teachings and are very persistent and talented. They have high hopes of becoming emperors. If you have any problems, you can ask them for help." Su Zhan and Li Peiza were indeed very talented and were very persistent in becoming emperors. Their cultivation had already improved by leaps and bounds. With the ancient heavenly emperor paving the way for them, their cultivation was much faster than the people from the crazed manor. Right now, their battle prowess was definitely not inferior to the disciples of the elite hall. They could easily suppress god generals and immortal generals. It was enough for them to join the elite hall. However, the ancient heavenly emperor didn't want them to join the elite hall. The two of them were his left and right arms. Only with the help of these two emperors would he be able to step into the eternal emperor level and be on par with immemorial Yin Yang and Yen Zhu. Gu Jiutian and Luo Wuhan bowed and sent the ancient heavenly emperor off. The ancient heavenly emperor quickly left and entered seclusion. He didn't want to be disturbed by worldly matters anymore. He was preparing to break through the formation of the divine core. On this day, the Tao Patroller once again arrived at the immortal world. However, this time, he came with the orders of the elite hall. The light of the great Tao paved a path that led to the outside of the Crying Ghost Ridge. The army quickly reacted. The war flags danced and the war drums rumbled. The three armies shuttled back and forth, and the stars in the world were drawn. Yi Qinghan soared into the sky with the dragon tiger mask on his face and the 7-foot crazed hammer in his hand. He silently waited for the Tao Patroller's arrival. Whoosh! Boom! The Tao Patroller stepped through the void and appeared less than 5 meters away from Yi Qinghan. Their eyes met, and their auras soared into the sky. Their emperor's aura was vast and mighty. Yi Qinghan's aura had already reached the peak. His undefeatable battle intent had never been defeated. At this moment, he wasn't afraid. He couldn't win, but his battle intent and aura had never been defeated. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Their battle robes fluttered. Yi Qinghan's legs were almost deformed. The void beneath his feet was distorted into a vortex, and a black hole was about to form. The Tao Patroller wanted to kill Yi Qinghan, but he didn't dare to. Of course, Yi Qinghan didn't dare to die. No one knew if Yi Qinghan could break through the 10 tribulations. Even he didn't know. Since he didn't know if Yi Qinghan could break through the 10 tribulations, attacking recklessly was a gamble. The bet was the inheritance of the two races. The stakes were a little high. The Taigu Emperor didn't dare to bet. Even if the probability of winning was more than 80%, he didn't dare to act recklessly. There was still a 20% chance left. If Yi Qinghan relied on that 20% chance to break through the 10 tribulations, it would be too late to regret. Hall Master agreed to talk with you. However, if you want to talk, you have to follow me to the elite hall. The Tao Patroller said coldly. Yi Qinghan stared at the Tao Patroller and replied quietly, "Do you think I'm a fool? If Hall Master wants to talk, we'll talk in the immortal world. We'll talk outside Crying Ghost Ridge." The Tao Patroller's finger moved the hilt of his sword. A malicious light flashed in his eyes, but he held back in the end. Hall Master is wise. He already guessed that you wouldn't dare to come. He told me to tell you to prepare 30 first-rate experts. We'll have a friendly competition. We'll talk as we fight. Whoever wins will have the final say. Do you dare? The Tao Patroller said provocatively. Yi Qinghan had seen the strength of the elite hall's disciples. Even he found it difficult to defeat an existence like the Saber Emperor, let alone the people of the Crazed Manor. Crazed Manor didn't have that many first-rate experts. Moreover, it was too hasty to fight now. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and clenched his fists. After a long time, he replied hoarsely, "Sure, but only after 300 years. Only 300 years. Don't tell me Elite Hall doesn't dare to wait." The Dao Patroller was disdainful. The Hall Master gave him 1,000 years as the bottom line. Yi Qinghan wanted 300 years. Then we'll wait for 300 years. After 300 years, Hall Master will personally come to Crying Ghost Ridge. The Dao Patroller said indifferently. He glanced at the Crazed Manor's army and thought to himself, after 300 years, none of the first-rate experts of Crazed Manor will survive. Hua, the Dao Patroller left. He came quickly and left even faster. Only 300 years left. Yi Qinghan watched the Dao Patroller leave. He felt extremely depressed. If Crazed Manor couldn't settle down in 300 years, it would be difficult for them to survive. Hua. Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and retreated to the rear. He gathered all the experts of Crazed Manor. District Master, Immortal Emperor Qing Zun, Mount Jingfan, and Immortal Chu Shijun were all present. Jiang Jingtian, Gu Qingyu, Emperor Feng, Li Feng, Heaven's Equal Monkey King, Mo Li, Mu Zhuang, Universal Love Saint, Zhua Shuguang, Desolate Lord Yi, Di Longtian, Emperor Yi, Green Lotus Sword Saint, Dark Dancer was also recruited. She had 70% of Yi Qinghan's battle power and was someone who could be nurtured. However, it was still difficult to gather 30 people. This time, they were going to deal with the disciples of Elite Hall. Those who were slightly weaker wouldn't even have the qualifications to fight. Chapter 2767. Yi Qinghan knew that his son was going to die, but he had no other choice. How could he not feel the pain of sending his own son to his death? Even so, they couldn't gather 30 people. Whoosh, Yi Qinghan took out all his emperor pills. Dilute them and consume them. Remember, you only have 300 years. Don't hesitate to use up all your resources. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. 20 emperor pills were all priceless treasures. Diluting them all at once meant that they contained an unimaginable amount of energy. After distributing them to so many people, there was nothing they could do if they didn't have enough. I'll go to the Ancient Emperor Academy to borrow people, but whether or not I'll be able to do so is another matter. So, we'll focus all our resources on the 16 strongest people. If all 16 of them can win, we'll win. Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. It was impossible for all 16 of them to win, but he could only hope for the best. The Ancient Emperor Academy belonged to the ancient gods. Would they borrow people? No one from the Crazy Manor wanted Yi Qinghan to take the risk, but Yi Qinghan was resolute and left. Yi Qinghan's goal was to borrow Su Zhan and Li Peiza. 2 was enough. Whoosh, whoosh, Yi Qinghan's current speed was extremely fast. In just half a day he had passed through 2 immortal empires and entered the Ancient Emperor Academy. He silently arrived outside the Ancient Emperor's seclusion room. Dong dong dong. A few knocks sounded on the door. Yi Qinghan didn't want to cause trouble for the Ancient Emperor. If the Elite Hall found out, the Ancient Emperor wouldn't have a good time either. The Ancient Emperor had just entered seclusion when he was woken up. Although Yi Qinghan's aura was concealed, how could the Ancient Emperor not sense it? The door opened automatically. Yi Qinghan slowly stepped into the palace and locked eyes with the Ancient Heavenly Emperor. Yi Qinghan, what are you doing here? The Ancient Heavenly Emperor asked with a frown. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath, bowed and said, I would like to borrow 2 people from the Dean. I hope that the Dean will agree. Su Zhan and Li Peiza? The Ancient Heavenly Emperor asked immediately. Yi Qinghan nodded and looked expectantly at the Ancient Heavenly Emperor. The Ancient Heavenly Emperor sneered and retorted, Why should I lend you my men? Don't forget that I am an ancient god. Dean, I don't believe in tribulation takers. Do you? What's wrong with me? Killing all the ancient gods and ancient immortals, severing the legacies of 2 races, What kind of psychopath would do such a thing? Even if we take 10,000 steps back and say that I really am that kind of person, help me and I promise that I will never harm your lineage. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. The palace sunk into silence. The ancient heavenly emperor would definitely leave himself a way out. Yi Qinghan looked at the ancient heavenly emperor's cold expression and said in a deep voice, Dean, there is no enmity between us. I am indebted to His Highness Jiutian and the 2 experts you nurtured. I have no reason to attack you. Even if I break through the 10 tribulations and 10 reincarnations, there is no reason for me to attack you. And I'm guessing your relationship with Elite Hall isn't good enough for you to fight side by side. Otherwise, you would have entered Elite Hall to cultivate and not here, right? The ancient heavenly emperor was silent for a long time before he said in a low voice, My father is one of the members of Elite Hall. Its original intention was to be the last barrier between the ancient gods and ancient immortals. It has all the techniques of the ancient gods and ancient immortals. The reason I don't want to enter Elite Hall is because I don't want my techniques to be exposed. Who is the Hall Master of Elite Hall? The primordial yin-yang immortal emperor? Hasn't he been gone for a long time? Yi Qinghan asked curiously. The ancient heavenly emperor shook his head and said indifferently, I don't know who he is. I have never seen him before and I don't want to see him. At least, before I reach the eternal emperor realm, I won't see him. He must have some restrictions. Otherwise, he would have come out long ago. So, if I don't go see him, he won't come looking for me. Then, did he participate in the war? Is the current Hall Master the same as the ancient Hall of Elite Hall? Yi Qinghan asked again. The ancient heavenly emperor looked at Yi Qinghan. He seemed to be investigating as well, but the information he could get was too little. It should be the same person. I am very wary of him. The ancient heavenly emperor wasn't very sure, but he was still very confident. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and got down on one knee. He cupped his fists and said, Dean, please help me this once. I really won't destroy all the ancient gods and immortals. I don't have the strength to do so. Even if I did, I can swear before you today that I won't do so. Otherwise, I will be struck by lightning and never be able to make a comeback. The ancient heavenly emperor leaned back on his dragon throne and closed his eyes to think. This was a very difficult decision. He believed that Yi Qinghan would repay the favor, but he was more afraid that Elite Hall would stain the ancient Emperor Academy with blood. In what name did the 2 of them leave? In what name did they help you? The ancient heavenly emperor asked. Yi Qinghan said firmly, They betrayed you. This matter has nothing to do with the ancient Emperor Academy. It was their personal decision. What benefits do I get? The ancient heavenly emperor asked. Yi Qinghan immediately replied, What benefits do you want? The ancient heavenly emperor stared at Yi Qinghan and whispered, I want Ancestor Yan's heart. Yi Qinghan frowned, shook his head and said, I don't have it. Don't be anxious. Give it to me when you find it. It depends on whether you agree or not, the ancient heavenly emperor said indifferently. Yi Qinghan gritted his teeth and pondered for a moment. Then he nodded and said, All right, I'll give it to you when I find it. The ancient heavenly emperor smiled and waved his hand to open the golden wall behind the throne. There was another space, a paradise. Li Peiza and Su Zhan were cultivating inside. This is the ancient god space. The time inside is different from the outside world. 100 years inside is only a year outside. What? The ancient heavenly emperor waved his hand and summoned the ancient god space. With a flip of his hand, the space turned into a palm-sized pearl that shone with divine light. I'll lend it to you. Return it to me 1,000 years later. What? The pearl appeared in front of Yi Qinghan. Although it was only the size of a palm, the space inside was not inferior to that of a small planet. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and was immediately overjoyed. He hurriedly thanked, Thank you, Dean Heavenly Emperor. Words cannot express my gratitude. I will definitely return it in the future. This ancient god space was too important. With it, 300 years had been reduced to 30,000 years. You're welcome. I want to see the true face of the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall. the ancient heavenly emperor said indifferently. Yi Qinghan received the ancient god's space, bowed, and slowly retreated. Once outside the hall, Yi Qinghan's figure disappeared without a trace. It was difficult for anyone to sense his aura and figure. Even the secret agents of Class 1 Hall could not detect him. The next day, Yi Qinghan returned to Crying Ghost Mountain Ridge. At this time, the people of Crazed Manor were diluting the Emperor pills and distributing them to the participants. This resource was not easy to obtain. Taking it meant that death was near. However, no one rejected this resource. If they did not die, more people from Crazed Manor would die. Crazed Manor was not afraid of death. Chapter 2768. No one in Crazed Manor was afraid of death. Those who were called out by Yi Qinghan all knew that this battle was suicide. No one could guarantee that they would win. Apart from Crazed Manor, Dark Dance, Immortal Emperor Qing Zun, District Master, Jingfan Mountain Lord, Yi Mingxi, and Yan tribes Yi Qinxing and Hualing Tian, there were a total of 27 people. Yi Qinghan had borrowed people, including Li Peiza and Su Zhan. The two were still in seclusion, and their imperial aura was much stronger than Immortal Emperor Qing Zun's. After all, while others cultivated for 10,000 years, they cultivated for 1,000,000 years. Their resources, cultivation techniques, and insights were all fully supported by the ancient Celestial Emperor. Both of them had the highest chance of winning against Class 1 Hall. Yi Qinghan waved his hand, opening the Overgod space. Take your resources. Here, you can cultivate at ease. I've placed all your cultivation techniques and secret arts inside. Take what you need. This battle is the most crucial. As long as we win, Class 1 Hall will have to retreat, and we'll have enough time. Everyone in Crazed Manor was excited to have an extra 30,000 years. If 300 years wasn't enough, how could 30,000 years be enough? 300 years later, only 1% of them would survive. 30,000 years later, 50% of them would survive. All of the experts from Crazed Mansion entered the Godlord space, where they chose their techniques and places to cultivate. The space here was like a planet with life, but the magical laws here were the same as those of the ancient world of immortals. Yi Qinghan also entered the Overgod space. He was prepared to cultivate wholeheartedly for 30,000 years, to consolidate his cultivation techniques and create his own Tao. Imperial pills weren't of much use to him, let alone diluted ones. Yi Qinghan sat cross-legged on the ground, consolidating all his secret arts, including human Tao arts, minor arts, and mystiques. Yan tribe's 3,000 mystiques, Imperial Immortal Finger, Fiery Solar Grand Mystique. Yi Qinghan did not let go of any of the supernatural powers and secret arts. He absorbed their dharma and principles, mobilized the dharma and principles of the demon core of the giant of starry sky, and reintegrated them. This was a long process. A single divine ability would take a few days to organize, and one would also need to absorb the laws and order. After all the secret techniques were organized, it would take about 10,000 years. If one wanted to create a cultivation technique, it would take 20,000 years. It was very dangerous. Yi Qinghan was completely immersed in his comprehension. The others were also bitterly cultivating. If they didn't go all out now, they would be killed in the future. In the outside world, Saint of Chess mobilized the army outside Heaven Conquest Camp to defend Crying Ghost Ridge to the death. He was worried that the people from Class 1 Hall would suddenly come over to attack them. The undying immortal world fell into a deathly silence. There was no war, but this was even more terrifying than a war. Once the war broke out, it would be enough to destroy the heavens and earth. It might even be worse than the ancient immortal world. Void Class 1 Hall. There were more than 30 young people standing outside the hall. They were Class 1 Hall's foundation and foundation. Once the older generation was gone, Class 1 Hall would have to nurture them again, and the amount of time and resources that Class 1 Hall would need was something that Class 1 Hall could not bear within a short period of time. 300 years later, only success is allowed. Failure is not allowed. I want Quang Manor to go back as well. No one is allowed to live. The hall master looked down at everyone and said in a deep voice, "Yes." The 30 or so Class 1 hall disciples bowed and said, "What are you carrying on your backs?" The hall master asked seriously. "The inheritance and revival of the ancient gods and ancient immortals." The Class 1 hall disciples said in unison, "For the revival and inheritance, what can you do?" "Until death do us part." The 30 or so experts were in unison, and their auras were like rainbows. They had been instilled with the idea that they would not regret even if they died. This was as terrifying as Kwang Manor's idea. However, Kwang Manor was willing to do it, while they had been instilled with the idea that changed their minds. "Go into seclusion for another 300 years. The hall master said coldly. The 30 or so Class 1 hall disciples were in unison. Their equipment was similar, and they all wore special masks. No one knew what they looked like, but one could tell that they were all very young. They had been selected from the countless ancient gods and ancient immortals with the best talent. It was not easy for more than 30 to survive. After all, only 30 or so people survived out of millions of people. Which one of them was not a monster? The young disciples retreated, and only the patrolman stood at the side. "Is there any news?" the hall master asked calmly. The patrolman shook his head and said, "Nothing major happened. Kwang Manor seems to have taken out all their trump cards, but the Yen clan's trump card did not appear. I suspect that they have no trump cards left." "How can that be?" "From what I know, there is still one trump card that has not appeared. You are underestimating the Yen clan too much." The hall master slowly stepped into the hall, his imperial robes fluttering. The patrolman did not understand the ancient times. Although he was the Taigu Emperor, he was not an ancient person. At this moment, he could only remain silent. "How are the Space Master God and the other 4 emperors?" the hall master asked. "They are still in the ancient immortal world. Their injuries are too heavy, and they will not be able to appear in the short term." The patrolman bowed and replied. The hall master thought for a moment, then said softly, "Go and take their Master God weapons and the Taigu Emperor's weapon." The patrolman was stunned, and he was somewhat shocked. The hall master wanted Class 1 hall's disciples to use the Taigu Emperor's weapon and Master God weapons to fight against Kwang Manor. However, he did not refuse. Just in case, face was not important. "Okay," the patrolman replied, then bowed and retreated. The hall master stood alone in Class 1 hall, looking at the mountain and river diagram. He took a deep breath, then turned and left Class 1 hall, heading into the depths of space. No one knew where he went. Time flew by, and dozens of years passed in the blink of an eye. A few thousand years had passed in the god space, and no one had come out yet. Outside the god space, there was still a large group of experts cultivating bitterly. Although the experts of Jingfan Mountain had been eliminated, they still had combat power and connections. They were contacting the people of the Golden Immortal Club. No matter how weak a Golden Immortal's cultivation was, they were still big shots. In the end, there were still many people who were very strong. The more combat power they had, the more chances they had. Most of the people in the Ancient God and Ancient Immortal camp did not have any status. However, it was different in Kwang Manor. They were all equal. Even if they died in battle, it would be at the final juncture. Even if they died, they would have glory. What could they do in the Ancient God and Ancient Immortal camp? They were just cannon fodder. If Kwang Manor dared to charge, they would only be able to say that they deserved to die. In this chaotic world, who could guarantee that they would not die? Zhang Fan and the others traveled everywhere, specifically acting as lobbyists. They hoped that the club members would join Kwang Manor and pressure Class 1 hall so that they would stop fighting. Yi Qinghan wanted to stop fighting, and all the experts in the immortal world knew about it. However, Class 1 hall might not give them a chance. Yi Qinghan stood on the moral high ground. If everyone wanted to stop fighting, they would obviously help Kwang Manor. In the past, the members of the club were not ancient gods or ancient immortals. At least, they were not pure ancient gods or ancient immortals. Their bloodlines were thin, and their status was low. Most of them joined Kwang Manor, but some escaped into the depths of the sea, hoping to find a paradise. Chapter 2769. With people fighting, there would naturally be people fleeing. That was human nature. Zhang Fan and the others saw that many people wanted to leave the undying immortal world. They tried their best to persuade them, but they were unwilling to help. We support sect leader Ye's decision. We also hope that he can end the war. I admire his fearlessness. A middle-aged man sighed. Zhang Fan smiled bitterly. Then lend us a hand. Our chances of winning will be higher. We are weak. Taoist Zhang Fan, please don't persuade us. Another big shot said firmly. Zhang Fan and the other big shots were a little angry, but they still restrained themselves and advised in a deep voice. Who doesn't have weak combat strength? But since all the big shots of the undying immortal world have stepped forward, Class 1 Hall should also give in. You don't want to contribute now? You want to wait until the war ends before you can enjoy the fruits of war? That's not right. Taoist Zhang Fan, we belong to the undying immortal world. Why can't we come back and enjoy peace after the war ends? Many big shots reprimanded, blaming Zhang Fan for being rude. Zhang Fan was unyielding and said angrily, "You don't contribute but want to enjoy the fruits of war? This old man is ashamed to be on the same level as you. The so-called big shot club is weak." The remaining people only wanted to enjoy the fruits of war. They looked at Zhang Fan with disdain and waved their hands, ordering their people to migrate to the border of the undying immortal world. Emperor Taihao smiled bitterly and sighed. Forget it. Taoist Zhang Fan, let them go. Seeing so many strong people migrating, the weak could only wait for death. With their speed, they wouldn't be able to escape from the undying immortal world. Rather than die outside, they would rather die in their ancestral land. On this day, a beautiful woman came to the Crying Ghost Ridge. She was riding a sky wolf. Even the sky wolf was in its fourth form. The woman's cultivation couldn't be seen clearly. It was very vague. Wolf Girl, the one who fought side by side with Yi Qinghan in the Crying Ghost Ridge. Back then, she was even more terrifying than Yi Qinghan. She didn't fall behind and even led the entire sky wolf tribe. Although Yi Qinghan had controlled her, he had never ordered her to do anything. She was still very grateful to Yi Qinghan. Therefore, before the final battle began, she came and took the initiative to lead the Sirius clan to stand on the side of the Kuang Manor. Kuang Fu came out to welcome her and led her into the depths of the army. "Where's Sect Master Yi?" Wolf Girl asked calmly. The chess saint received her personally. He cupped his fists and said, "The sect master is in seclusion and will only appear in about 200 years. If you don't mind, you can rest in the military camp for a while. I will immediately remind him when he comes out of seclusion." The wolf girl's face was cold. Her fingernails were long and slender, sharper than a blade. She could stab her enemy's heart at any time. Other people's fingernails were all flesh-colored, but only hers were red, completely soaked in blood. For so many years, she didn't know where she had been fighting, nor did she know how many people and ferocious beasts she had killed. "Got it? Arrange a room for me," Wolf Girl said coldly. Yi Qinghan didn't know that Wolf Girl had come. At this moment, he was meditating on the human Tao. Its operating dharma and logos as well as order were becoming clearer. Using the human Tao to observe the heavenly Tao, everything became clearer. In order to create Tao techniques and secret techniques, one had to first understand the world's order and dharma and logos. This was the prerequisite. Yi Qinghan was slowly absorbing dharma and logos and order. In the end, he realized that the human Tao was different from the Imperial Immortal Finger technique. The Imperial Immortal Finger technique followed the dharma and logos of all Taos, but the human Tao was equal to dharma and logos and order. Its power was one level higher, and its destructive power was stronger. For a full 10,000 years, Yi Qinghan had sorted out all the secret techniques and mystiques. All dharma and logos and order were under his control. Yi Qinghan opened his eyes and rested for a while. When he came out of the Chief God space, he realized that Wolf Girl had come. Furthermore, she was so strong in combat. He was overjoyed and quickly led her into the Chief God space. "I'll help you in this battle. Remove the spirit-controlling mystique from my sea of consciousness." Wolf Girl was tall and had a perfect figure. She had a curvy figure, and her voice was slow and deep. She was full of charm. Yi Qinghan immediately nodded and said, "No problem. Back then, I was also afraid of exposing myself. Now that I've been exposed, there's no need for the spirit-controlling mystique to control you. However, with my current strength, I'm unable to reverse it. Remove the spirit-controlling mystique. Once I become an emperor, I'll definitely remove it for you." Wolf Girl nodded and did not say anything else. Yi Qinghan quickly led Wolf Girl to where Supremacy Yi, the multicolored snake, and the God Devourer Hawk were. He pointed at the Beast God Cannon and said, "You can cultivate the Beast God Cannon for at least 20,000 years. That's enough time for you to fully comprehend one Beast God Cannon." Although Wolf Girl was human, she had been completely assimilated by the wolf race. The order of her flesh and blood had been assimilated into the wolf race. She would have an advantage in cultivating the Beast God Cannon. The moment she saw the Beast God Cannon, Wolf Girl revealed a look of joy. The multicolored snake opened its eyes. It originally had a sinister look, but when it saw Wolf Girl, it immediately shrank its head and ran behind Supremacy. It seemed to be very afraid of Wolf Girl. Wolf Girl used a cold gaze to look at the multicolored snake. The multicolored snake was so scared that it trembled all over. It smiled obsequiously and said, "Beauty, don't misunderstand. I have no enmity towards you. Look at you. You're really embarrassing me, the emperor of all beasts." Supremacy Yi sneered in disdain. Then he bowed and said to Wolf Girl, "Hey Beauty, we meet again. Do you still remember me? That cute divine bird." Wolf Girl looked at Supremacy Yi with disdain. This guy actually dared to call himself the emperor of all beasts. Then what was she? "I can't forget." Wolf Girl snorted and said, "Like I said, you and I have a deep relationship. Let's cultivate the Beast God Cannon together. In the future, the world of all beasts will be divided equally between us." Supremacy Yi was terrified to the bone. Wolf Girl's wolf nature and beastly aura were too strong. No one would believe that she was a human. "You guys settle down for a while. I'll cultivate the Beast God Cannon. Don't disturb me for a while," Wolf Girl said firmly. The God Devourer Eagle was an honest person. Moreover, his talent wasn't good. He would need to settle down for a long time after cultivating for a while. Therefore, he didn't have any objections. However, Supremacy Yi and the multicolored snake were unwilling. However, they didn't dare to refute and could only bow and agree. Yi Qinghan didn't expect the multicolored snake to be afraid of Wolf Girl. However, it was good that there was someone who could subdue him. The multicolored snake's eyes were too unsettling. He stared at everyone as if he wanted to eat them. He didn't even let off the people of Kuang Manor. Now that Wolf Girl was here, perhaps he would be more obedient. Yi Qinghan smiled and quickly retreated. After resting for a few days, he began to use the Immortal Emperor Finger technique and the Human Dao technique to create his own mental cultivation technique. The Immortal Emperor Finger technique, the Human Dao technique, the Inverse Space Galaxy diagram, and the Giant Star Beast Demon Core were the foundations of his self-created cultivation technique. Along the way, on the level, Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. He felt that the Yen tribe, the Ancient Immortals, and the Ancient Immortals were too orthodox. If I were to go against the Tao and reverse the laws and order, what kind of power would that be? Yi Qinghan closed his eyes and pondered. His hands formed a seal, and the power in his body surged. He began to test out the subtle power. When the laws and order were reversed, the heavens and earth darkened. Even the golden body of utmost saint couldn't withstand such power. Chapter 2770. Once the Dharma and Logos were reversed, heaven and earth would not tolerate it. Once the order was reversed, the heavenly Tao would cease to exist. No one had ever thought of reversing the Dharma and Logos. No normal person would do so. Reversing the Dharma and Logos was something no one would do. Not even the Inferno ancestor had done so. Yi Qinghan's reversal of the Dharma and Logos nearly caused the golden body of Paragon to collapse. The blood shattered the bones and turned into a blood sword that pierced the heavens. Yi Qinghan sucked in a breath of cold air and muttered, "No wonder no one has ever reversed the Dharma and Logos. Even the Inferno ancestors' flesh might not be able to withstand it. If I were to reverse the Dharma and Logos of the golden body of Paragon, would I be able to change the physical body and create a reversal technique?" Yi Qinghan muttered to himself. In order to create a different technique, he had gone crazy. Reversing the Dharma and Logos of the physical body would cause him to turn to ashes if he was not careful. But creating a technique that conformed to the Dharma and Logos of the physical body, could he surpass his predecessors? Not necessarily. Once you have the courage, you can do anything. Yi Qinghan did as he thought. He was most familiar with the Dharma and Logos of the physical body. In that instant, Yi Qinghan gave up on fusing with the Inferno ancestor's arm. He began to reverse the Dharma and Logos of the physical body. The Dharma and Logos represented heaven and order represented the heavenly Tao. Reversing the Dharma and Logos of the Dharma and Logos of the physical body was equivalent to reversing the heavenly Tao. It was also equivalent to transcending 10 tribulations and 10 lifetimes. Others did not send Yi Qinghan to his death, but Yi Qinghan took the initiative to send himself to his death. After transcending this tribulation, he would no longer be part of the physical body of the physical body. What? The flesh on his finger wriggled. All the laws and Dharma and Logos of the physical body were changing. Every cell was changing in the opposite direction. The Inferno ancestors' blood had been refined and replaced with a new bloodline. A bloodline that was not part of the Dharma and Logos. Yi Qinghan's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Reversing the Dharma and Logos of order would require one to endure unbearable pain. His soul was almost being torn. His left hand was badly mangled, and the flesh began to wriggle. Time seemed to slow down, and a day felt like a year. Yi Qinghan watched with his own eyes as the order of his flesh and blood and Dharma and Logos reversed. His soul was distorted, and he almost fainted. Yi Qinghan put on his mask. The dragon tiger mask could clear his mind and strengthen his soul. At this moment, Yi Qinghan could not help but be thankful that he had consumed a soul-type spirit earthly soul pill. Otherwise, with his soul's previous state, this reversal would have probably caused his soul to die a tragic death. Yi Qinghan growled. The order of the first finger changed, and the Dharma and Logos reversed. Then, the second finger. As time passed, reversing one finger would take several hundred years. By the time all 10 fingers were reversed, it would already be 3,000 years later. Yi Qinghan found that the power of his apotheosis immortal finger was weakening. The apotheosis immortal finger was no longer compatible with his physical body. There was no turning back. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed fiercely. He began to reverse the order and Dharma and Logos on his arms. Precious light flowed all over his body, and the order and Dharma and Logos around him retreated. Time was as slow as a stream. It was slow and powerful, but it could change everything. Outside the chief god space, thousands of stars flickered. An alien star exploded, and its light covered the sky. It was a shocking sight. In the depths of the void, the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall watched as the alien star revolved without a trace. He could not grasp its trajectory at all. If he could find and destroy the alien star's foundation, the foundation of the person corresponding to the alien star would also be destroyed. Everything would no longer be a problem. The Hall Master watched in astonishment as the alien star streaked across the sky and disappeared in a flash. He kept chasing after the alien star, but it was not fixed in one spot. Instead, it shuttled through the universe and disappeared in the blink of an eye. However, the light was still there. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The Hall Master's figure flickered as he used greater spatial transference to cross an entire galaxy. However, even after decades of chasing, he could not catch up to the alien star. After so many years, you finally moved. Since you're not within the laws, then come out. The Hall Master's aura soared. He controlled the stars in the universe and headed to the depths of the universe, wanting to block the alien star's escape. However, the alien star was faster than he expected and disappeared in an instant. There was no other way. If the Hall Master could not catch the alien star, He could not destroy its foundation. 130 years. The Hall Master had chased after the alien star for 130 years, but he could not catch it. 130 years was equivalent to more than 13,000 years in the Chief God space. Furthermore, Yi Qinghan had comprehended for more than 10,000 years in the Chief God space. More than 20,000 years had passed in the Chief God space. There were only a few thousand years left before the 30,000-year deadline. In the outside world, only a few decades had passed. But the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall let out a breath of turbid air as he stood on the dead star. At this moment, he had no choice but to stop. There were only 30 years left before he could negotiate with Yi Qinghan. If he continued chasing after the alien star, it would be meaningless. It would only give Yi Qinghan more time. This time, it seemed that he could only attack Yi Qinghan and break his Dao heart. Then, nothing would be a problem. Whoosh! The Hall Master of Class 1 Hall had spent more than 20 years on the way back from the depths of the Star River. There were only a few years left before the negotiation. The Dao Patroller had already returned from the ancient immortal world. He had brought back the space-time Master God weapons, the 4 Taigu Emperor weapons. Each of them was an existence that could destroy heaven and earth. They had used up the 12 immemorial emperors' endless efforts and the ancient immortal world's most powerful weapon refining resources. Use your projection. I will use my projection to negotiate with Yi Qinghan. Remember, the goal this time is not to negotiate. It is to pull out all the trump cards of the Yen tribe. Uproot them. There is only one alien star left. I have plenty of chances to kill it. The Hall Master said in a deep voice. The Dao Patroller nodded, cupped his fists, and bowed. Then I will bring the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall to the immortal world. Go. The Hall Master said indifferently. The Dao Patroller immediately retreated and called out all the disciples in seclusion. There were 36 of them. Their cultivation had already reached a heaven-defying stage. They were the final foundation of the ancient immortals. Time Inheritor, Mountain River Inheritor, Ancient River Inheritor, Axe Emperor Inheritor, Heaven Shocking Staff Inheritor, step forward. 5 of the 36 stepped forward. Their auras were restrained, but they gave off a suffocating feeling. I will take away your inherited Emperor weapons. In this battle, the 5 of you are only allowed to win. If you lose, kill yourselves. The Dao Patroller said coldly. The 5 of them were abnormally resolute and confident. Their Emperor hearts were firm. The other Hall Master of Class 1 Hall were the same. In this battle, they were only allowed to win. All of you, follow me to Ghost Crying Ridge. Let those brats from Quang Manor see that Class 1 Hall will never lose. The Dao Patroller said coldly. Wah! The 36 of them stood in unison, waiting to depart. Whoosh! The Dao Patroller brought the 36 disciples across the void. They left the ancient immortal world through another space node and entered the immortal world. At this moment, Yi Qinghan had completely given up on the Yen ancestor's eyes and ears. Everything was his. Even his bloodline was no longer that of the Yen ancestor. He was a new race that did not belong to the Yen ancestor, nor did he belong to the ancient immortals. He was an individual that did not belong to the 5 elements and was not bound by laws and order. However, he still had one restriction, and that was his current realm. He had not reached the Great Perfection realm. This kind of disregard for laws and order was only within a certain range. If the Taigu Emperor and Class 1 Hall attacked him, he would still die. There was no time to create his own cultivation method. He only had a few years, which was equivalent to a few days in the outside world. There was not enough time to do anything. Chapter 2771. The Dragon Tiger mask was stained with blood. His entire body was covered in blood, as if he had walked out of a pool of blood. His aura was gone. He had transcended the 5 elements and was not bound by laws and order. Yet, he could mobilize laws and order and control the 5 elements. Yi Qinghan waved his hand, and rain poured down, washing away all the blood on his body. He was still the same person, but he was no longer human. At this time, The experts of Kuang Fu began to wake up one after another. The aura of the experts had increased by hundreds of times. The one who improved the most was Shirgu. His hair was disheveled. Yi Qinghan was the eternal pain in his heart. He had fallen into the ruthless path, and even Yi Qinghan could not get her back. There was only one reason for this. He was too weak. In the past 30,000 years, Shirgu had given his life to the laws and the path, and forcibly raised his cultivation to the level of Supreme Chao. Since boss can't get you out of the ruthless path, I'll do it myself. Shirgu clenched his fists and resolutely stepped out of space. His figure flashed, and he shot up into the clouds. He viciously grabbed an enormous planet and directly refined it, turning it into a huge brick. Boom! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The second star was refined, and the third star was soon followed by the third star. The terrifying laws and order collapsed. He refined a star in a few hours. He refined a total of 10 stars, and then condensed the 10 bricks of order and dharma and logos. Finally, he used 3 days to refine them into a golden brick. It shone with a golden light, filled with dharma and logos and order. I'll slap you bastards to death. Shirgu roared with the golden brick in his hand. If Yi Mengshi was ruthless, then he was too infatuated, to the point of madness. Yi Mengshi entered the ruthless path and achieved great success. She was the ruthless empress. Hua Lingtian had achieved great success with the celestial burning technique, and could instantly refine fourth form experts. He could rival the Saber Emperor of Class 1 Hall. Yi Qinxing's human sword technique had reached the level of the previous generation's Supreme Elder. This time, the owner had truly reached the pinnacle of the inverse space galactic diagram. He was definitely one of the few existences below the Taigu Emperor. Everyone was improving. Jiang Jingtian, Gu Qingyu, Lin Wutian, and the others had all reached a new level. Lin Wutian was no longer the only one in the crazy mansion, aside from Yi Qinghan. He was now on par with the others. Even if he was stronger, he wouldn't be that much stronger. In this life, if someone were to claim the title of Emperor first, it would definitely be this group of people from Crazed Manor and one or a few of the 36 disciples of Class 1 Hall. Li Peiza and Su Zhan had also awakened. They held the immemorial pseudo-emperor sword and the soul-seizing frost spear in their hands. Their auras were overwhelming, and their emperor's might was dense. The path to becoming emperors had already been formed. If they didn't die, the emperor's throne would be within their reach. Yi Qinghan told them about his deal with the ancient heavenly emperor, then said in a low voice, "Brother Li, Brother Su, please forgive me for harming your reputation." Li Peiza smiled calmly and replied, "It's fine. I don't care about reputation. In my life, the most fortunate thing was meeting you. You changed the trajectory of my destiny. I should be thanking you." Su Zhan said, "Brother Yi, there's no need to blame yourself. We'll accept the title of traitor." Yi Qinghan was extremely moved. These two were among the few people he had acknowledged in the undying immortal world, and they were the first ones he had acknowledged. "I won't thank you. Let's wait until after the battle. We won't go home until we're drunk." Yi Qinghan swung his fist to meet the other twos, full of heroism. "First to death. Then to freedom." "Ha!" Crazed Manor laughed. The probability of death in this battle was too high. Anyone could die. Drinking after the battle was naturally to honor death first, then to honor freedom. At this moment, Wolf Girl stood up. Her entire body was emitting a bestial and wolfish aura. She was a woman, but she had such an aura. Her sharp eyes were terrifying. What a powerful beast god aura. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and involuntarily took half a step back. "My friend is also here to help," Yi Qinghan immediately explained. Everyone from Crazed Manor nodded. However, Wolf Girl was unusually cold and did not have any human aura. "Let's go out." Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and took the lead to step out of the chief god space. After everyone came out, he waved his hand and put away the chief god space. Then he walked towards the Crying Ghost Ridge. Outside the Crying Ghost Ridge, the elite hall had gathered. At least half of the 36 elite hall disciples were more terrifying than the Saber Emperor. All the core gods and the inheritors of the Taigu Emperor had arrived. Their fighting strength was inferior to the people from Elite Hall. Although their cultivation techniques were similar, they were inferior to the inheritors of the Emperor weapons. The inheritors of the Emperor weapons were all imposing. It was as if they were deliberately suppressing the inheritors of the Emperor weapons. No one dared to stand in front of them. At this moment, the Dao Patroller was also extremely disdainful of the inheritors of the Emperor weapons. He was also an inheritor of the Emperor weapons. Due to his bloodline, he was slightly weaker than the Taigu Emperor. However, he had the strength of the Taigu Emperor. In front of the Crying Ghost Ridge, there were more than 40 chairs on a plain. Aside from the Dao Patroller who sat at the front, the other elite hall disciples sat at his sides or behind him. The inheritors of the Emperor weapons sat at the back. The other ancient gods and ancient immortals could only stand. Yi Qinghan had brought a large group of experts here. He was not afraid of death and wanted to use battle to negotiate. If he won, there would be peace. If he lost, he would be punished. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Thud thud thud. There were more than 30 experts. Only the Taigu Emperor was missing. Their overall aura was suppressed by the other party. Yi Qinghan and the others arrived at the plain and chose to set up camp on a mountain 10 miles away. They casually opened up some places to sit and rest. The Hall Master of Elite Hall did not come. Yi Qinghan frowned as he stared at the Dao Patroller. He stepped to the center and asked coldly, "Is the Hall Master of Elite Hall a coward?" Boom. The Dao Patroller was furious. He smashed the table and chair with a palm. His aura soared to the stars. "How dare you!" The Dao Patroller stepped to the center and confronted Yi Qinghan. His aura reached the clouds, and the Emperor's aura crushed the order. Yi Qinghan looked at the Dao Patroller. He did not care about the Emperor's aura at all. Even though he was not completely outside the 5 elements, half of his body had crossed over. "I am indeed very daring. I had discussed with you before that we would negotiate in 300 years. Even if we were to fight and negotiate at the same time, the Hall Master of Elite Hall should be here by now." Yi Qinghan said coldly. Whoosh. At this moment, an image suddenly appeared in the void. It was the Great Hall of Class 1 Hall. A white-haired old man sat in the Great Hall. He wore a mask, and his eyes pierced through the void. It was as if he could see this place from Class 1 Hall. "Even though I am not in Crying Ghost Ridge, I can still talk with you. Choose a place and we can sit down and talk. I can also see the strength of Crazy Manor." The projection of the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall actually transcended and directly walked out of the projection. The illusory figure became corporeal, as if it was an ancient supreme emperor with flesh and blood. It directly arrived in front of Yi Qinghan. Hiss hiss. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. This kind of divine technique had truly transcended everything. Chapter 2772. Class 1 Hall's Hall Master projected an afterimage and walked out of the projection. His aura was so strong that a simple look suppressed Yi Qinghan's aura. Hiss. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. After a long time, he extended his hand and said, "Please." To the left of Crying Ghost Ridge was a tall mountain that overlooked the plains. Class 1 Hall's Hall Master appeared at the top of the mountain with a single step. With a wave of his hand, the mountain was cut off, and a round table and 2 stone chairs appeared. "Sit." Class 1 Hall's Hall Master said coldly. Yi Qinghan slowly sat down, facing Class 1 Hall. He leaned against the stone chair and stared at this person, as if he wanted to see through the illusion and see his identity through the projection. Yi Qinghan clasped his hands and placed them on the table. He looked at Class 1 Hall's Hall Master and asked, "How should I address you, Hall Master?" "It's just an empty title. Just call me Hall Master," the Hall Master said coldly. Yi Qinghan looked at Class 1 Hall's Hall Master and said calmly, "We can talk. There's no need to fight. You want your ancient immortal world, and I want the undying immortal world. To hell with being a savior. I'm not interested in killing ancient gods and ancient immortals, and I'm not interested in taking revenge either. What do you think?" "Words are no guarantee. I won't put the inheritance of ancient gods and ancient immortals on your promise. Class 1 Hall's original intention was to destroy you. If you want peace, sure. Kill yourself. The 3 Yen clan members of Crazed Manor will kill themselves. I'll leave the undying immortal world and give this place to Crazed Manor, Class 1 Hall's Hall Master said indifferently. Yi Qinghan frowned and looked at Class 1 Hall's Hall Master. He snorted and said, "You're forcing me. I won't kill myself, and neither will the 3 Yen clan members of Crazed Manor. If you really want to force me to the point of killing ancient gods and ancient immortals, then bring it on. No problem. I just want to remind you that if you don't agree, Crazed Manor might lose more than 4 people," the Hall Master said coldly. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and replied firmly, "So what? No matter how many people from Crazed Manor die, Class 1 Hall will die as well. Those who deserve to die will eventually die. Those who don't deserve to die will become emperors. Which of the Taiga emperors didn't step on corpses to get to where they are? They either kill or be killed." The Hall Master was cold and merciless. He did not care about the lives of the elite Hall disciples at all. Even if only one of the 36 people remained, he felt that it was worth it. Yi Qinghan silently looked at the Hall Master. Although he was reluctant to give up the lives of the Crazy Mansion brothers, could he really let Yen Ao and the others commit suicide at this point? If he were to die, would these people dare to say that they would spare the Crazed Manor? Can the war be stopped? The Kuang clan has followed me for countless years. If they were afraid of death, they would have left a long time ago. I dare say that the Kuang clan will repay me with their lives. Boom! Yi Qinghan slammed his palm on the stone table. With a wave of his hand, the war flag of the Kuang Manor appeared in his hand and fluttered in the wind. Bang! Crack! The war flag was inserted into the stone table. It was 10 meters tall and swayed in the wind. It could be seen from far away. Whoosh! The 30 experts of the Kuang Manor camp stood up. Some held the war flag of the ancient killing god, while others held the war flag of the inner sect. The war flag represented faith. As long as the war flag did not fall, their faith would not be extinguished. Yi Qinghan looked down at the Hall Master and said coldly, "If we win 16 battles, the ancient gods and ancient immortals will withdraw from the immortal world and live in peace for 1,000,000 years. Do you agree?" The Hall Master asked indifferently, "What if the elite Hall wins 16 battles? I am willing to be a prisoner and follow you to the elite Hall. From then on, the ancient immortal world and the immortal world will be cut off, and the Kuang Manor will never invade the ancient immortal world again." Yi Qinghan gambled his own fate. With the elite Hall as the boundary, he would be imprisoned for eternity. He would not even have the ability to call himself an emperor. Clap, clap, clap. The Hall Master clapped his hands and laughed. "That is a good idea. You can't do anything in front of me." The immortal world was unable to support the birth of an eternal emperor. Order and laws did not allow it. Even the ancient celestial emperor had to enter the ancient immortal world if he wanted to condense 2 godhoods. "Then let's fight." Yi Qinghan turned and looked at the battlefield. Both sides were ready to die. This time, no one wanted to leave alive. "We will take turns. The elite Hall will not bully you. We will send someone first." "You can send anyone you want," the Hall Master said. "Axe Emperor's inheritance." Whoosh. Boom. The Axe Emperor wielded his gigantic axe and crushed the ground with every step he took. Boom. In Crazed Manor's camp, Shirgu stomped on the ground and held the golden brick. "I will fight the first battle. Don't fight with me." The disheveled Shirgu looked like a madman. His voice was hoarse, but his will was firm. He stepped into the battlefield, not giving anyone else a chance. Yimingxi's eyes under the merciless Dao seal flashed with a strange light. Then she slowly lowered her head and said mercilessly. She had already fallen deeply into it. Now, even if she wanted to come back, she could not. Shirgu against Axe Emperor. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom. His aura soared into the sky and rose crazily. A huge axe-shaped weapon condensed behind the Axe Emperor. "Fuck off." Boom. Shirgu was furious. He shattered the clouds and shattered Axe Emperor's axe. The golden brick's laws and principles were unleashed. It covered the sky and the sun. Taigu Emperor's laws and principles. The pupils of both sides shrank. Shirgu, who had entered the demonic path, had actually comprehended the order and dharma and logos of the primordial emperor. The golden brick spun and formed rays of golden light that descended from the sky and covered the entire battlefield, not giving the Axe Monarch a chance to escape. Boom! Bang bang bang! Axe Emperor rose from the ground and slashed at the golden brick with his axe. However, the laws and principles of the Taigu Emperor's laws and principles were incomparably tough. It was not something an emperor's weapon could break. An indestructible axe against a golden brick that could block all attacks. Both sides clashed and the earth shook. Mountains and rivers wailed. Everything was in mourning. Crack crack crack. Axe Emperor slashed dozens of times. The web between his thumb and index finger cracked, but he could not break Shirji's golden brick. Shirgu stepped on the golden brick and formed seals with his fingers. He commanded the laws and principles of the Taigu Emperor's laws and principles. Boom! The golden brick pressed down and smashed Axe Emperor into the ground. His leg bones were broken and blood stained the golden brick. Poochie! Axe Emperor spurted out blood and was smashed into the ground. More than one of his bones was broken. Shirgu waved his hand and the golden brick returned to his hand. He smashed it at Axe Emperor's head. Too strong. Shirgu was at the forefront. Indeed, the feelings of protection could create miracles. Boom! Axe Emperor lay in the deep pit and smashed his axe at the golden brick. With a loud boom, the axe was sent flying. Bang! The corner of the golden brick slammed into Axe Emperor's head. Blood splattered everywhere. His head was smashed and his skull was crushed. It was not that Axe Emperor was not strong. It was just that he could not break through Shirji's golden brick laws and principles. He could only take the beating. Yi Qinghan said happily, "Yes, the ancient heavenly emperor gave it to me. Furthermore, he and I have discussed working together to deal with you." The hall master was taken aback. He had originally thought that Yi Qinghan would try to defend the ancient heavenly emperor, but who would have thought that Yi Qinghan would take the initiative to admit it? When he thought about how the Ancient Emperor Academy had suddenly issued the strongest arrest warrant for Li Peiza and Su Zhan 30 years ago, he started to have some doubts. He wants to use me to kill the Ancient Heavenly Emperor? He wants the Ancient Emperor Academy and Class 1 Hall to fight each other so that he can reap the benefits? The hall master was deeply suspicious of Yi Qinghan's intentions. Everyone had their suspicions, and the hall master was also human. He could not see through everything and could not predict everything. Otherwise, why would he need to do this? Yi Qinghan was using the hall master's suspicions to protect the ancient heavenly emperor. The Lord God's space in your hands was stolen? The hall master asked coldly. Yi Qinghan said firmly, "I already said that the ancient heavenly emperor gave it to me." The hall master snorted. At this moment, he did not believe that the ancient heavenly emperor would give the Lord God space to Yi Qinghan, who would choose to work with someone who could betray them at any time. The ancient heavenly emperor would not be so stupid to betray him in the next second. The ancient heavenly emperor knows that the divine will master God's Lord God space is in your hands. I can already imagine what he would do. Be careful not to get killed, the hall master reminded coldly. Yi Qinghan laughed disdainfully and retorted, "Would he dare to kill me? Would you dare to let him kill me? Are you not afraid of sending me out of the 5 elements?" The hall master knew that Yi Qinghan's greatest advantage was that he could not be killed. He would not kill him unless he had no other choice. Only when he had no other choice would he gamble. Yi Qinghan looked at Shirgu leaving the stage and swept his gaze across the crowd. The strongest person in Kuang Fu should be Yan Ao. If he won the second round, Kuang Fu's fighting spirit would be even stronger. "Yan Ao, you will fight this round," Yi Qinghan said firmly. Whoosh! Boom! Yan Ao's aura burst forth, giving off the aura of the number 1 emperor in the world. The hall master and the patrolman's pupils shrank. The killing intent in their eyes was self-evident. No one in Kuang Fu could die, but Yan Ao must die. The hall master knew that Yan Ao was the flame ancestor's backup plan. He had to use the backup plan to kill him. "Since you sent him to the battlefield, if I don't kill him, I would be letting you down." Boom! The void shattered, and a figure descended from the sky. He had an elegant bearing, and his emperor's aura danced in the air. He was only half a step away from the Taigu Emperor realm. There was still an expert in Kuang Fu. Yun Lang, this is my personal disciple. I wonder if Sect Master Yi will take a liking to him? The Hall Master sneered. Yi Qinghan clenched his fists and narrowed his eyes at Yun Lang. That person's aura was too strong. He should be on par with the old reincarnation Shakyamuni. As long as he fought to the death, he would have the strength of the Taigu Emperor. Could Yen Ao win? At this moment, Yen Ao put his palms together and crossed them. Blood flowed from his 10 fingers. The aura of the Yen clan's ancestral blood filled the air. The Emperor's aura soared into the sky and clashed with the Emperor's aura. Yen Ao was chanting an incantation, and it became more and more urgent. The wind and clouds surged. Hum! 10,000 swords roared, wanting to be unsheathed. Many people held their life swords tightly. Only the immemorial yin-yang sword remained unmoved. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 10,000 swords danced, cutting through the sky. The sword in Yi Qingxing's hand missed, and even the hilt flew out. Just as Yen Ao was chanting, a sword light rushed out from the Crying Ghost Mountain range. Hum! The sword chi shattered the void, and the sword light tore through the magnetic field of the Crying Ghost Mountain range. Almost at the same time, in the ancestral land of the Yen clan in the ancient immortal world, the reincarnation sword beside the corpse of reincarnation Shakyamuni, the Yen clan's earth sword, and the Yen clan's heaven sword all broke through the void. They were so fast that even the laws of order could not stop these 5 swords. Heaven, earth, human, emperor, reincarnation. The Yen clan's 5 swords shuttled through the void and returned to their positions on Yen Ao's back as if they were fixed in place. Whoosh! The 10,000 swords returned, and the phenomenon disappeared. Yen Ao summoned the Yen clan's 5 swords back. He raised his head and looked at Yun Lang coldly. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was the world's #1 emperor. Patrol, kill him. Boom. The Hall Master could not control Yen Ao anymore. Yen Ao had lost control. The Yen clan's backup plan was indeed terrifying. You dare. Yi Qinghan's palm covered the sky, standing outside the laws of order. His chi soared to the sky. Although he had not become an emperor, he was indeed standing outside the laws of order. If you want to play, I'll accompany you. If you want to fight to the death, I'll accompany you. If you dare to attack, I guarantee that the inheritance of the ancient gods and immortals will be broken. Yi Qinghan's eyes were filled with the light of nirvanic extermination, intimidating all eternity. Chapter 2774. I was too tired earlier, so I went to take a nap. I don't have enough sleep every day. Sorry, but I will persevere until the end. I will fight until the end. The Hall Master was shocked. He did not expect Yi Qinghan to already be outside the laws. Even though it was just half a step away, it was still very scary. Bush, bush, buzz, the void shook, and the laws retreated. Yi Qinghan appeared on the battlefield, coldly staring at the patrol. Just at this moment, a pair of eyes looked down on the ground. It came from an unknown direction and stared at the patrol, staring at the entire battlefield. It was impossible for the Yen clan to only have one trump card. As expected, when the Hall Master shed all pretense of cordiality, someone appeared. The Taigu Emperor. The Taigu Emperor of the Yen clan. However, he didn't dare to show himself because he was no match for the Hall Master. As soon as he showed himself, the Hall Master would be able to track him down. That pair of eyes flashed as he watched Yi Qinghan stand outside the Dharma and logos before retreating. He was just one step away from forcing out the Yen clan's trump card. The Hall Master did not expect Yi Qinghan to leave the 5 elements in advance and stand outside the laws. That trump card also left. Fight well. Out of the 30 rounds, we lost 16. Naturally, I will go with you. If I win, don't think about it. Unless you dare to bet that you will definitely break my Dao heart. Yi Qinghan coldly looked at the Hall Master's projection on the mountaintop and reminded them. Yen Ao slowly stepped onto the battlefield. He had the Yen clan's heaven, earth, and human sovereign reincarnation sword. His aura was majestic, and his disdainful eyes were comparable to the world's #1 emperor. The world's #1 emperor. The Hall Master took a deep breath. He could sense the Yen Emperor's aura from Yen Ao. Could it be that the Yen Emperor has turned around? The Hall Master stared at Yen Ao in disbelief. He could predict many things, but there were also many things that he couldn't predict. For example, Yen Zhu's backup plan, and Yi Qinghan. No matter how strong Yun Lang was, he couldn't be stronger than the #1 emperor in the world. Other than the Taigu Emperor, no one else could win, not even the Dao Patrol. Back then, the Yen Emperor had swept through the immortal generals and immortal generals when he was at the peak of his 4th form, fighting against the Taigu Emperor. Both sides suffered heavy injuries, but he didn't fall. That was the faith and belief of the Yen tribe. Hiss! The Hall Master sucked in a breath of cold air. He waved his hand to signal the patrol and said coldly, "Stand down. Let Yun Lang hit you." When the patrol officer retreated, Yi Qinghan naturally followed suit. Yun Lang looked disdainfully at the masses. He did not believe that the first emperor of the world would not be defeated. Moreover, Yen Ao was not the #1 emperor under the heavens. Even if the Flame Emperor is here, I still dare to defeat him, Yun Lang said confidently as he took out a towering battle sword. His emperor robe fluttered as he slowly descended. Yen Ao didn't reply. He formed a seal with his hands, and the 5 swords of the imperial heaven, earth, and human sovereign were unsheathed. The 5 swords soared into the sky and turned into 5 lightning dragons that tore through the void. They attacked Yun Lang from 5 different directions. Ring! Swoosh! Swoosh! The 5 swords tore through the void. Although Yen Ao's heart moved, the mountains and rivers trembled. Boom! Ring! Yun Lang's sword moved according to his heart's desire. His graceful movement and sharp sword moves continuously struck the 5 swords of the Yen tribe. At the beginning, he was calm and unhurried as he fought against the 5 swords of the Yen tribe. Boom! When the Emperor's swords collided, the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. Ring! Yun Lang defeated the earth sword, and the back of the sword hit the reincarnation sword. The Emperor's sword trembled. His body twisted to dodge the attacks of the human realm and heaven sword. His sword was graceful as it pierced towards Yen Ao's body. It was too fast. Even in the immemorial era, these 2 people's strength was at the 2nd stage. Buzz! Yen Ao didn't even blink. He formed a seal with his hands and chanted an incantation. The 5 swords of the imperial heaven, earth, and human sovereign appeared in front of him and formed a strange sword array that was like a mouth that could swallow the sky. Boom! Yun Lang's sword pierced into the sword array. His boundless strength couldn't even cause a ripple. Bang! Crack! The 5 swords stirred the mountains and rivers. 3 swords suppressed the Emperor's swords in Yun Lang's hands. The remaining 2 swords seized the air and drew a sword light that swayed into the galaxy. The sword edge directly cut towards Yun Lang's neck. Whoosh! Yun Lang's reaction was extremely fast. His body lowered and his neck tilted back, dodging the 2 soul-stirring swords. However, a strand of his hair was cut off. Countless people stared at the battlefield. The battle between the 2 of them was truly soul-stirring. Every sword move contained the order of laws and logos. Once an emperor technique hit the opponent, it would definitely injure the opponent severely. Yi Qinghan clenched his fists. No one was more nervous than him. If it was him, perhaps he wouldn't be so tired. Ring! Whoosh! The sword light shattered the mountains and rivers. Yen clan's 5 swords erupted with their ancient might in Yen Ao's hands. Every sword could steal a soul from 1,000 miles away. Bang! Bang! The bones in Yun Lang's hands were shattered. No matter how fast he was, he couldn't withstand the 5 swords. Poochie! Finally, as time passed, the heavenly sword pierced through the emperor robe and took away a piece of flesh from Yun Lang's left arm. Yun Lang roared. His sword moved in all directions and knocked away the 5 swords. However, the bones in his hand were clearly visible. The impact was too strong. However, as time passed, Yen Ao's ability to control the five swords became stronger and stronger. His battle prowess continued to rise. After the five swords were knocked away, they drew an arc and quickly returned to Yun Lang's side to reform the sword array. The sword array was ever-changing. It connected the heavens and the earth and affected the sun, moon, and stars. It contained the supreme laws and logos of heaven and earth. Yi Qinghan exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Yen Ao suppressed Yun Lang, which finally allowed him to breathe a sigh of relief. However, the shocking sword moves of these two were too terrifying. They could turn the tables at any time. Yi Chenxing and Hua Lingtian's veins were bulging. The true successor of Yen clan was Yen Ao. He was the true sovereign that Yen ancestor had set up after countless years. Nothing must happen to him. At this moment, the two of them were watching Yen Ao display his sword moves and silently learning. Every move contained the supreme laws and logos of human Tao. The power of human Tao connected the heavens and the earth and changed the order of the stars. Boom! Yen Ao began to counterattack. He controlled the five swords at the same time. His soul was also heaven-defying. His powerful qi and blood supported him. Bang! Bang! Ring! Yun Lang's defeat became more and more obvious. His Tao heart rumbled. When the Taigu Emperor was young, no one was his opponent in Elite Hall. However, he was defeated the moment he came out. How could he be willing to accept this? Roar! Yun Lang's emperor robe was dyed red with his own blood. Yen Ao wasn't injured at all. He should be glad that Yen Ao wasn't Yen Emperor. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the chance to resist. Bang! The five swords chased after Yun Lang from five directions, wanting to take advantage of the situation and kill him. Whoosh! Yun Lang was a top-tier expert after all. His body sank and charged towards the ground. Flames surged around him. Whoosh! Whoosh! The five swords seized the air and chased after the ground. Bang! Bang! Yun Lang was sinking, but the sword in his hand kept on attacking the five swords of heaven, earth, and human emperor. Sparks flew everywhere. He lost control of his body and crashed into the ground. At this moment, the combat power of the two of them suppressed all the experts, causing their Tao heart to rumble. The two of them were definitely young paragons. If Yun Lang didn't die, he could easily become an emperor. However, it was a pity that he had to face Yen Ao today, an existence comparable to the number one emperor in the world. Boom! Yun Lang's hand bones were broken. The emperor's sword whistled and smashed into the ground. Whoosh! Whoosh! Both of Yen Ao's hands changed into two hand seals. Law incantations rumbled. Each of his swords slashed out an imprint that ruthlessly pierced through 10,000 laws and directly penetrated Yun Lang's body. Even the emperor's robe couldn't block the five sword attacks. Whoosh! Boom! Yun Lang was hit by the five swords at the foot of the mountain where Yi Qinghan was standing, causing the mountain to shake. Ring! Whoosh! After killing Yun Lang, the five swords of Yen clan pierced through the clouds and returned to Yen Ao. They formed a sword formation that was like a black hole. At this moment, Yen Ao could kill gods if gods came. In at most 3,000 years, Yen Ao would become an existence like Yen Emperor. In 30,000 years, he could become an emperor. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.